Call the meeting to order at the Summit Planning Board, October 23rd, 2023. The adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the board in preparation of the 2023 notice, which sets forth the date and time and place of this meeting, and by properly posting such notice and forwarding the notice to those designated newspapers and persons requesting meeting notices. Please be advised this is a non-smoking building. Fire exits are to my right and to your left at the back of the room. This is a scheduled meeting of the Planning Board. There may be other meetings currently running simultaneously with this meeting. If you are not here from the Summit Planning Board, your meeting may be upstairs or elsewhere in the building. We'll go to our Pledge of Allegiance now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Stephanie, if you could call the roll.
Sure. Chairman Anderson,
Present.
Mr. Brinkerhoff,
Present.
Ms. Balson Alvarez,
Here.
Ms. McNeil,
Here.
Mr. Delory,
Present.
Councilmember Miniger,
Here.
Vice Chairman Zucker,
Here.
Mr. Formicelli,
Here.
Mr. Stern,
Here.
Mr. Bell.
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Wow, we have a full board. Well, thank you all for being here this evening. Tonight, we have a special guest, Steve Spur, who's the chairman of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And Steve has done, everybody got in their packet, a really excellent memo. Thank you for doing this, Steve, on their observations and the things that they come across during the operation of the zoning board that he thinks and the board members think should be brought to our attention for future consideration. So, Steve, what I've asked Chris Sobieski to do for the members, benefit of the members of the board, is to basically tell us a little bit about the differences. You did a great job in your cover letter, by the way, but tell us a little bit about the differences between the two and how they function. And then if you could pick up from there, that would be great. Thanks. Yeah, we'll let Chris.
We'll let you kick off.
Yep.
All right. Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, just a quick kind of stage setting for Mr. Spur here. So pursuant to the MLUL, Board of Adjustment is required to, at least once per year, review its decisions on applications and appeals for variances. The Board of Adjustment is also then to prepare and adopt by resolution a report on its findings on zoning ordinance provisions which were the subject of variance requests, and also offer recommendations for zoning ordinance amendments or revisions, if any. The Board of Adjustment is to send copies of its annual report and accompanying resolution to the governing body and planning board. The purpose of this is to encourage and enable the zoning board to bring to the attention of the planning board and governing body particular provisions of the zoning ordinance which had created problems for the Board of Adjustment during the preceding year. For example, if during the course of the year a large number of corner lot cases came before the zoning board, it may be an indication that the ordinance provisions should be re-examined and possibly changed. To paraphrase Justice Stein, who was writing for the New Jersey Supreme Court in the Medici v. BPR Co. Case that we're also aptly familiar with. Actually, this board wouldn't be, because Board of Adjustment, not this is the planning board. What am I thinking? I'm just incredibly familiar with it because I do this every day. So anyway, to quote the justice, the legislative enactments requiring annual reports and recommendations from the Boards of Adjustment reflect a legislative policy intended to ensure that a municipality's master plan and zoning ordinance reflect contemporary needs and conditions that the governing body is kept informed of. Provisions of the zoning ordinance and various variance requests. The annual reports by Boards of Adjustment summarizing variance requests throughout the year and recommending amendments to the zoning ordinance are designed to avoid successive appeals for the same types of variance by encouraging the governing body to amend the ordinance so that such appeals will be unnecessary. When an informed governing body does not change the ordinance, the Board of Adjustment may reasonably infer that its inaction was deliberate. So to summarize that in non-legalese, basically the Board of Adjustment, as you guys are probably aware of, deals exclusively with variance requests. They're usually the first line of defense when it comes to homeowner cases, and typically that's sort of why the annual report is a thing. It's at the end of the year, Board of Adjustment puts a report together and they say, hey, we had X number of setback variance cases, X number of use variance cases, etc. And the idea is that by way of this annual report, giving it to the planning board and the governing body, the two bodies that are responsible for legislating land use policy in whatever municipality. It informs their decision-making so that they can change the ordinance to say, hey, maybe we can increase the setbacks, or maybe we can permit X, Y, and Z uses in our zone.
Right.
So that's kind of the gist of it, and I think Mr. Spur, sorry to take away your thunder, but hopefully that
No,
sets you
that's
up, so
wonderful.
please
And,
feel free to proceed.
Chairman Spur, you point out a number of really interesting things in here, and in some cases it appears maybe it's a governing body decision, some cases maybe it's a combination of zoning board, planning board, and staff, or perhaps engineering decisions. So what I'm hoping to do is ask the board to pay close attention to your presentation. I'd like to put together a subcommittee through 2, 3, 4 board members. I guess it has to be 3 or less, Chris. But to dig into this a little bit further and then get back a more formal response to you.
Excellent. Yeah, and I promise to be brief. I've spent plenty of hours behind the dais, so I appreciate it.
No, we look forward to it. Thanks.
But yeah, no, it's a bit more context here. I think the distinction that the zoning board looks at the work that we do as opposed to what the planning board does, and certainly the governing body, is the planning board and the governing body are policy-making bodies. We at the zoning board are quasi-judicial, so we kind of get the ad hoc, kind of the oddball cases that come to us. And as your counsel had suggested, we try to find some kind of trend, a common thread that oftentimes runs between them all. And where we can surface those commonalities, we want to bubble those up to the planning board, to the governing body to hopefully take action. It's oftentimes as sexy as screening around air conditioning units or generators, for example, that we at the zoning board saw consistently come up, and that was again bubbled up and taken for action there. So to your point, Chairman, certainly in the annual report, the 2022 version that was provided in your packet is available for interested members of the interested public on the city's website. It's structured initially to provide some insight into land use concerns that we would hope could be addressed by amendment to the DRO, or in due course, perhaps the master plan. I won't take the time here to actually delve into the individual issues. I'll trust for you to have already or soon read those. And to the chairman's point as well, what we want to establish as new, certainly in terms of a dialogue between the zoning board and the planning board, is an opportunity for the chair, myself, or hopefully my successors in coming years, to come before you to spark this conversation, and then set a cadence of regular conversations so we can actually dig into what's occurring in some of the cases where this may have bubbled up, or the series of cases where we saw some commonality, and then really empower you to look for opportunities in the DRO in conjunction with your planner. We're fortunate, Stephanie is our board secretary as well, so she has kind of her mind split at times between the planning and zoning board and has a real kind of insight into what this may offer. I would flag as well for Councilman Miniger and Matt in terms of some steps that staff can take, or the governing body. We flagged things in here like in-house engineering reviews. We're sensitive to the cost that an applicant, in the case of the zoning board may incur drawing upon, we love Colliers or even their own engineering resources, wherever we can potentially draw upon in-house engineering staff. Should they have additional hours available, there's a cost savings there, really a real value perhaps for the municipality to redeploy some available assets. I'd flag also for you, not that we offer you an answer in this regard, but hybrid meetings. That had been a hot topic of discussion during COVID, and I'm sure it's a point of sensitivity for you at the planning board, where you want to encourage public input, and want to leverage technology as it is available, but to probably our council's concern, respect the legalese of it all, and ensure that we can properly hear cases and have those stick should they ever find themselves up for appeal. And then I think the final point that I would draw, again, just for general consideration here, is communication of pending applications. Stephanie, who came on board not too long ago, has really made an extra effort with respect to the zoning board applications, and I'm sure the planning board as well, to publish material promptly, fully online, to work with our communication staff at the City Hall to ensure that applications of interest, not just large commercial applications, but even potentially smaller residential applications that may trigger a particular debate and discussion in the community, that those become aware for the public's input and consideration. We, as you do, take very seriously public input in the decisions that we make. So whatever we can be doing to proactively inform the public to the applications we have before us and incorporate that within our decision making, we certainly want to do that. So it's my hope that not just the land use considerations, but also perhaps how we transmit some of the information that's shared here in these chambers almost every week between the zoning and the planning board, that we can share some of those experiences, leverage some of what we all put many hours behind to the benefit of current residents, but also we hope future residents who may come before our boards with an application. So I've been advised by my own counsel not to dive too deeply into particular issues or active applications. I'm sure some planning board members would love to talk about design guidelines or who knows what, but we're going to withhold that now, and we'll invite that conversation within the ad hoc committee that Chairman Anderson and I will hopefully form very soon. Yep. And just in the last point I'd make in terms of the cadence of this is the zoning board's publication of its annual report is now shifted to the first quarter of every year. So you'll see the 2023 report come about in about March of 2024. So we can establish that regular cadence and never look back, just look forward in terms of this new dialogue hopefully we'll form.
Well, Steve, that was really very helpful. There are a number of suggestions in here that Vice Chairman Zucker and I have talked about, and several other board members, and as you mentioned, we probably shouldn't get into individual details of each and every one of them, but I think there's some really excellent observations. And you see things at a level that we sometimes miss. And so some of them was sort of one of those things where you kind of get the flat forehead, and say, wow, I should have thought about that. So I think that's very good. And as I said, I really appreciate you doing this. There's a lot of information, gives us a lot to dig into. And as I said earlier, it's kind of a multidisciplinary between planning, zoning, the staff on the zoning side, staff on the engineering side, and Matt and others to sort of sort out which bucket it kind of falls into. But it was very, very, very well done. I really appreciate you doing it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me first on the agenda. I get to put my kids down now, so thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Can
All right.
we ask
Thanks.
a question?
I'm happy to take the
allowed?
question.
Chris, are we allowed to ask a question or two here?
I can't imagine a reason
No
why you wouldn't be able
specific
to.
cases
No.
in this case on either
You're
board.
not perfect.
Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking, is the group gonna have a zoning board person too, so that we can
Yeah.
further, drill
I
down?
would hope so,
on
yeah.
some of these
The
ideas?
intent is, I would want to see some balance between perhaps city staff, planning board participation, as well as zoning board participation. Is we want to be able to describe in detail what we've seen here,
Yeah.
or even what we continue to see, and just, again, help provide some clarity, some sharpness there, and then we leave it to the policymakers to set the priority in terms of what we take action on.
What's our limitation in terms of a working staff, a working team, let's say? The number of people that we could put together before you violate an Open Public Meeting Act?
As long as there's not a quorum of any board, you can work together as a subcommittee. It's an excellent proposal. I apologize for being a little late.
Oh, it's okay, yeah.
But, it dovetails into the MLUL provision requiring an annual report. The whole purpose is to bring, in my opinion, full circle through the zoning board of adjustment hearing the majority of the variance applications and seeing where things potentially could be modified for the benefit of all residents and applicants, non-resident applicants as well, and bring that attention to the planning board, the gatekeepers of the master plan, and the governing body, the policymakers, so that the legislation gets the benefit of what is demonstrated through the quasi-judicial process to provide for opportunity for improvement. So as long as you have, there's no quorum of any board or
Yep,
governing body,
okay.
there's no prohibition of working together in my legal.
So for the members of the public, in addition to this gentleman being a very well-informed member of the public tonight, he happens to be the planning board attorney, and his colleague Chris Sobieski was pitch hitting for earlier in the meeting, so I'm not sure when you guys will change or whatever you'll do, but Summit's an amazing town. There are people walking around on the street that have all kinds of expertise, and it just happened to come in tonight.
Again, my apologies.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine.
Thank you
Steve,
very
thanks
much,
very
Chairman.
much.
I
We
appreciate
it. Yeah.
Can I just ask one
Oh,
quick
Rick,
question?
okay, one quick question.
I just want to echo what was said about the nature of the comments. They're very imaginative
Thank you.
and thought-provoking.
You get to practice pronunciation of Port de Cocher as well.
I won't speak to any particular issues. I've taken some notes, but I won't read a single one of them. But I would just point out that some of the issues are environmental in nature, particularly on steep slope and on permeable surfaces. And if it's not out of the question to add someone from the Environmental Commission to the mix,
Sure.
I'm the liaison to that
Right,
commission,
yeah.
so I could do that.
Okay.
I'll volunteer to be on it, but more importantly, I think anyone who isn't on it should have the vehicle to make sure their voices are heard both from the public, and certainly from this board.
Sounds like
Because
you may be
there are some
campaigning.
things that could use some tweaking.
I think that's right.
As good as they are.
As you two, receive advisory opinions, the zoning board does as well, and we weigh those. Some are a little more useful than others, or voluminous, frankly. So we, for sure, we would welcome environmental considerations, or really any member of the advisory committees. I know we do actively solicit input in our annual report preparations from our planner and our engineer as well as our attorney, frankly. They have a wealth of knowledge, not just in Summit, but from other municipalities where they may be working as well.
Well, Steve, I think Rick is campaigning to be on the subcommittee.
Well, I'm most impressed by your board attendance tonight. So if you want to
Yes,
step up to
right.
the zoning board, Rick, you're welcome anytime.
All right. Yeah, sure, yeah.
No poaching.
And also congratulations to both chairmen, because you're both volunteers.
Yes.
And breakfast is the feedback of champions. And to think that you could spend a whole year hearing applications and not take all that information to try to make it better is often what happens in municipalities. So to have you come and really share that and drive the effort to make sure that we're continuing to improve is really admirable.
Thanks, Matt.
So that's
Thank you.
good to see.
Well, Steve kicked the ball kicked off the thing, so thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. We'll let you
Okay.
enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so we have a public hearing here with Bristol Myers Squibb here, public hearing 23-270, preliminary and final site plan approval for landscape buffer, lighting, and solar canopies. Before we get started, I want to introduce Marie Raffet, is that correct? Is our new representative for our engineering firm, and is replacing Dipti Seth, so welcome, Marie. And I think at this point, the only question I have for Bristol Myers Squibb team is that, are you confirming for the record that this is both a preliminary and final site plan
Yes.
approval? Okay.
Oh, for the record, my name is Kevin Moore with the firm of Stevens and Lee, and I represent Bristol Myers Squibb this evening. And yes, we are seeking both preliminary and final site
Okay.
plan concurrently.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right, in your hands, do we need to swear some people in, Steve?
Certainly happy to do so. If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
first,
please.
So I did want to reflect that I had an opportunity to review at the applicant's notice, found the content to be sufficient, found it to be timely served and published, both published and served on October 2nd, both at least 10 days prior to this evening. So the board certainly has jurisdiction, in my legal opinion, to hear and decide the application. And I don't know if the applicant's counsel wanted to make an opening statement or not, but I'm ready to swear everyone in when ready.
Okay.
Sure, why don't I just give the names of the witnesses before my opening statement so we can get them sworn in.
Great.
Christopher Serrati with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. He's our project site civil engineer, who's going to describe the overall site and the general location of the solar canopies. We have Richard Marr, Director of Global Capital Project Engineering for Bristol Myers Squibb Company, who will describe the solar canopies. Karen Murphy with HDR Architects and Engineers, our project lighting engineer, and she will describe the replacement lighting for the Bristol Myers Squibb Company campus. And then Anthony M. Cortese with HDR Architects and Engineers. He's our project landscape architect. He's going to describe the perimeter buffer landscaping augmentation that we are doing, and he is also going to describe how this landscaping will minimize any visual impact of the proposed solar canopies and minimize the lighting impacts.
Okay.
So with that, those are and then Mr. James Kyle with Kyle plus McManus, who is our project planner. So with those 5 witnesses, if they could be sworn in, that would be great.
Thank you. With the chair's permission, I'll add to Mr. Burgess and our new engineer as well. If you'll all raise your right hand, do all of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you all. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Moore with the firm of Stevens and Lee, representing the applicant this evening, Bristol Myers Squibb Company. The property which is the subject of the application is 556 Morris Avenue here in Summit. It's designated as Block 701, lots 1, 9, 2, 93, and 94 on your city tax map. It's 90.9 acres in area, and it's in your PROD, Planned Research Office Development Zone. The application that we are here before you with tonight is preliminary and final major site plan approval for the installation of 6 solar canopies in 3 phases, phases 1, 2, and 3, over portions of the parking lots for buildings S11 and S12 on this campus. We are also seeking preliminary and final site plan to replace all of the site lighting that is currently on the campus with new site lighting, which now will conform completely with your development regulations ordinance, as opposed to the non-conforming conditions that are out there now. Finally, we're seeking preliminary and final site plan approval of our perimeter landscape buffer in the vicinity of the parking lots for buildings S11 and S12. Also, in connection with the application for the solar canopies, we're seeking 2 C2 bulk variances from sections 35-9.90 for D and F of the development regulation ordinance to allow the solar canopies to be at their maximum incline, have a height of 24 feet, where a maximum height of 18 feet is otherwise permitted, and to allow the canopies to have a width of 45 feet, where a maximum width of 40 feet is otherwise permitted. Discuss the witnesses. I have 22 exhibits this evening. Before everyone screams in pain, I have provided a copy of the exhibit list to the court reporter, to Ms. Sulios, and to Mr. Warner. So rather than me reading them all in, if we can just deem them put in the record, and then they can be discussed by my witnesses.
Counselor, that's acceptable?
That's fine. I take it each and every one will be addressed in some way, shape, or form by a witness, correct?
Yes.
Okay, then
And
that's
they've all
fine.
been pre-marked
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
Finally, before we start our presentation, I'd just like to address, there's been some concerns by the neighbors of the campus, and they've been expressed on the internet about the applicant's ongoing forestry management program for the perimeter buffer. Some neighbors expressed concerns about trees being cut down. They expressed concerns about the tree trunks of felled trees being left on campus, and they expressed concerns about the brush piles on the campus. First, all the trees the applicant has taken down were diseased ash trees, and those were taken down under the instructions and supervision of the city forester, Mr. John Linson, who is here this evening. Likewise, the tree trunks were left there under Mr. Linson's instructions and supervision because this constitutes best forestry management practices. Similarly, the brush piles were placed under Mr. Linson's instructions and constitute best forestry management practices as well. However, we were very concerned about the neighbors' concerns. So on the 7th of last month, we met representatives of Bristol-Myers Squibb, met actually in the perimeter buffer with Mr. Linson, the city fire chief, Eric Evers, and the city deputy fire chief, Paul Mbimbo, and walked the perimeter buffer. Chief Evans and Deputy Chief Mbimbo determined that the felled trees and brush piles did not create a fire hazard. Further, Mr. Linson determined that the condition of the felled trees and the branches and brush piles did constitute best forestry management practices. But as an accommodation and to some of the concerns of the neighbors, the applicant did agree to slightly spread out and lower the heights of the brush piles. Finally, Mr. Linson and the applicant's landscape architect who will be testifying this evening, Mr. Cortese, walked the entire perimeter buffer together and determined the planting enhancements that Mr. Linson's desired, and those enhancements are reflected on the plans before you this evening. So with that, I'd like to call my first witness, Mr. Christopher Cerati.
Before we proceed, Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
I may, with your permission, I just had two questions, if I may. One, the accommodations that you referred to as, those were taken already, those are not stipulated to as conditions of approval?
Right, they've
That's already
been
been
done.
done, right?
Correct.
That's what I understood, but I just wanted to be clear on the record with that,
Certainly.
number one. Number two, I don't believe I swore in Mr. Linson. If he is going to testify, I don't want to forget, and I could swear him in now.
Yep.
If you don't mind raising your right hand, do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Steve.
Okay, Mr. Cerati, could you give your education, licenses, and professional experience for the record?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Chris Cerati. I'm an associate principal with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services in Parsippany, New Jersey. I graduated from Rutgers University with a civil engineering degree in 1989. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 1994. I've appeared throughout the state of New Jersey before planning and zoning boards, testifying on matters of civil engineering and site design, and I have been before this board on prior applications.
I would offer Mr. Cerati is an expert in the field of civil engineering.
Any board members have any questions of Mr. Cerati? Nope, that's good, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cerati, if you could, you're going to deal with exhibits A1 and A2. If you could just briefly say what they are and then go through your presentation.
You bet. So first up is Exhibit A1, and this is our adjacent property owner plan from the submitted documents. Essentially, this is just an overview of the campus, just for orientation purposes. I can find my pointer. So north is up on this map. Obviously, the site is the 90-plus acres with frontage along River Road, along Passaic Avenue, Morris Avenue, Lincoln Avenue, and Madison Avenue. The site project area is actually the parking lot that I'm tracing here in the sort of the southerly end of the campus. Buildings S11 and S12 are immediately adjacent to that to the north. And then there is the adjacent landscape buffer that was referred to, and others will speak more about this evening. And then adjacent residential properties all along that side of the site. I'll move now to A2. Oops, it's not on that. That's it. Exhibit A2 here is entitled a site plan exhibit, and this is exactly that. It's a colored rendering of our site plan. It depicts the two buildings, S11, S12, the parking field behind those buildings, and as you can see, and I'll trace it with the pointer here, we've proposed solar canopies over portions of the parking lot. There are 6 canopies in total, one along the rows of parking immediately to the south of building S12. We skip a row and we have another set of panels over parking in the central island in that it would be the western side of the parking lot. Moving to the central part of the parking lot, again, 2 kind of a split segment of solar canopies that will cover parking immediately to the south of what is the stormwater basin area. So 1, 2 here, that's 4, and then there are 2 smaller ones on the easterly end of the parking lot, immediately behind buildings behind building S11. Those solar canopies will be supported on columns and foundations that will be located in the parking lot, the existing parking lot islands. The canopies will have a roof drainage system that will facilitate the stormwater runoff from the canopies directed directly into the subsurface drainage that's in the parking lot. We'll be adding some drainage piping along the sort of the spines of the canopies to again convey that drainage to the existing stormwater inlet systems in the parking lot, which then distributes and that drainage is directed to the stormwater basin in the parking lot. There's a couple of transformers and basically control equipment that will be located immediately to the south of building S11. It's in a currently grassed area. That will be, it's actually kind of a bermed up area. There's a little bit of topography to it. There will be some small retaining walls surrounding that equipment on 3 sides to screen it from view. There will be, again, 2 transformers and some control panel equipment on that pad. The solar canopy, there was a question about, the canopy on the end not extending to the end of the parking, and that's intentional because of the tree cover there. it's kind of shadowed a good part of the day, and so the orientation and the placement of the canopies is maximizing the sunlight exposure. As I mentioned, all the drainage will be directly piped into the ground. There won't be any splashing on the ground or any surface water runoff. It'll be all piped into the existing stormwater system. In total, we have a little less than a half acre of disturbance, and that's primarily to construct the foundations. Again, each of the columns will have a foundation, and to construct the drainage piping associated with those downspouts at each column. As a matter of reference here, the MLUL does not consider solar panels as impervious coverage. In this application, we're on top of parking lot and mostly a paved area anyway, but technically there's no increase in impervious cover, even if these are protruding over it as they are on some of the islands, which are stone, but they're not considered as additional impervious cover under state law. So the only additional impervious that we have is the transformer and equipment pad, about 1,500 square foot pad, so very minimal. There is a, I'll not flip the page here for a moment, but off to the east a little bit, there is an existing parking lot that's being used as the sort of a laydown area. So that's indicated on the overall site plan, and that's where sort of the staging of some of the materials as they're brought into the project would be done. So in terms of impact to the site, there's very minimal impact. It's really just constructing the drainage system and installing the foundations for the canopies. There is some bus shelters that are beneath. I believe there's two, and they are underneath the canopies, and they'll be relocated to other sidewalk areas on site. Exact location to be determined. And then there is lighting, and that'll be spoken to a bit more as well. The lighting in this area will be undermounted in the from under the canopies, and will be conforming to the light height. So.
And all of the lighting will be on areas of existing impervious coverage, correct?
That's correct.
And then, as a condition of approval, we'll agree to that all the solar roof drains will be installed with the cleanout at the downspout?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. That concludes Mr. Cirati's direct
Okay.
testimony. He's here to answer any questions.
Okay, good. Any members of the board have questions for Mr. Cirati? Then we'll follow questions from our board professionals, and then questions from the audience.
Just one question.
Sure.
Can you tell us, how does it deal with ice and snow? Is there a heating element in the solar panels so that there's no buildup?
Our next witness will be able to answer that,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Richard Marr.
Sure.
Okay. Any other members? Rick?
Thank you for excellent presentation. I was reading some of the comments that maybe we'll be hearing more about later in another context that relate to the position of the solar canopies. Call attention to, well, but they're in the report and I didn't see a written response to them as yet.
Please keep your voice up.
Yeah, sorry. I had the advantage of walking the site and appreciated that. I noticed that among the features, quote unquote, to be removed from the islands where the canopies will be anchored are approximately 46 trees. They're not huge, they're 8 or 10 inch caliber, but they nonetheless give some shade and character to a good portion of the parking spaces that are there now. The rhetorical question is, why couldn't they be in the alternative rows where there are no trees? I think I know the answer to that, but I'd like to hear yours.
I know Mr. Marr is going to cover that, but it's essentially so that the foundations can be in the protected islands that are there. We're trying to put those foundations there, as well as there will be some EV chargers that'll be associated with them, and so they will have a home in those islands.
Yeah, I think that was one of the other corollary questions in the written comments from both staff and commissions. And I didn't see any quantification of the number of electric vehicle charging stations, that might relate to encouraging electric vehicle use. Is that
Well,
going to be part
all of the, and Mr. Marr can correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the parking spaces under the canopies will be equipped with EV charging stations. They are not shown on the site plan. BMS has already sought permits for them from the city. Under the municipal land use law, the site plan approval is not required for charging stations.
What would be apart from the difficulty of the foundation work for the posts that are holding up the canopy, what would be the geometric or mathematical problem with doing the alternate rows?
It's cited specifically to maximize the solar energy impact, the slight impact on the solar canopies so that they get the maximum electrical generation, and that's how they've been cited.
Great answer. I'd like to hear it from a civil engineer.
I'll let Mr. Maurer
Okay.
answer.
Okay, I'll
He's
defer
going to
the
answer your question. I don't want to steal his thunder.
Okay. All right, so we'll hold that question for his testimony.
I think he'll do a better job than I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, any other questions from the board members? From our board professionals, or questions of this witness?
Just one. The attorney mentioned a three-phase development. Could you explain?
Yeah, Mr. Mara will address that too.
Mr. Mark's going to be busy.
Yeah, he's
He is.
Yes.
So I just had one additional question. Could you talk about the screening that's going to be around the transformer?
So there is on three sides, as I mentioned, we're sort of building that pad into what is a kind of a berm that rises up from the parking and elevation. On three sides of it, there'll be a retaining wall that's going to retain the earth that's existing there so that we create that level area. So three sides are screened by that wall, but we need to maintain clearances on that fourth side between that pad and the parking lot, kind of limited for space there, so we're proposing a guardrail there to protect the equipment, and there really isn't room then to provide that access and clearances to the transformers to get a landscape screen in there. I would also mention we'd be screening it only really from the parking lot. There's 6 rows of parked cars and a 200-foot landscape buffer to the property line, so we felt that it was probably okay as is. And there's other mechanical equipment immediately in that area, so it's all kind of concentrated together.
So that berm, you're digging into the berm to get the
Correct,
transformer
yeah,
in there?
yeah.
So it's sunken down below?
That's right.
Your-
They'll be out of view on three. I'm sorry.
Could you finish your question, please? So I just wanted to confirm that the transformer and those kinds of equipment are dug into that berm and surrounded by a wall that's holding back the wall?
Correct, yes.
And so it's actually sunken?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any members of the public have a question for this witness? So please come forward and state your name and address, please.
Dwight Hiscano, Passaic Avenue. My property, my backyard adjoins just north of the plan here.
Could you spell your last name, sir?
Hiscano.
And could you give us your address, Mr. Scano?
157 Passaic Ave.
Thank you.
Just a quick question about the transformer. How loud will that be? Will that be emitting any noise, or will it be silent?
Mr. Mara will be addressing that. He's a very popular witness.
All right, that was my only question so far.
Okay. Any other members of the public have questions for this witness, or do you want to save them all for Mr. Marr? All right. Call your next witness, Mr. Moore.
Call Mr. Richard Mara. I don't
There
want to
you
keep
go.
everybody in suspense. Mr. Mara, could you please give your position with the applicant, Bristol Myers Squibb Company?
So I'm the Director of Global Capital Project Engineering for the site. Grab my...
And Mr. Mara, you're also trained as an electrical engineer, is that correct?
I am, yes.
Mr. Mara will be testifying from exhibits A4 and, A3 and A4.
And I'll do my best to answer the other questions.
But Mr. Moore, to be clear, he's representing Bristol Myers Squibb
Yes,
as an employee, I guess, right? Is that
Yes.
correct? Not as an engineer?
that's correct.
Okay, just be sure. Thank you.
That's correct.
Just Mr. Bell wanted to hear my answer from an engineer, so I wanted to let him know he was going to be hearing
You
it
know,
from
we
an
never have
engineer.
enough engineers.
So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you to the board for entertaining or the opportunity to present this application on behalf of BMS. And likewise to acknowledge Councilor Moore and my team of professionals from Langen and HDR for preparing the documents that are before you. So the solar canopies, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. And we've already described why we're putting them there, because we're putting EV charging underneath of them. To correct Mr. Moore on one thing, only phase 1 right now, which is A1, A2, and A3, have proposed EV charging under them today. That's what's before the city for a planning board. We're putting in 44 EV charging stations in our first phase, and the system is designed to build out to 108. If we build them, they will come, kind of thing, to use that expression. So phase 1, A1, is 45 feet by 207 feet. It's nominally, or it's 9,315 square feet. The canopy is inclined. I showed all 3 phases, but I'll show you this on another exhibit.
And I'm sorry, which exhibit are we on?
We're on exhibit
at the
A3.
moment,
A3?
And now we're just moving to A4.
A4, okay.
Each of the canopies are inclined at 7.2 degrees, and then at the end, they have a elevation that stops the snow from falling off at the end of them. And they are 24 feet at maximum elevation and the height, and they are 13.6 internally to allow for vehicle transport underneath them, fire truck, whatever needs to go there. And so I'll go back to exhibit A3 and talk about A2 is the same physical dimensions as A1. The timing of the installation of the A1 and A2 solar canopy is within the next 2 years. Electrical equipment supply chain is an extreme problem for us right now. It takes us literally years to get equipment after we place the orders. Then phase 2, which is B1 here, is 45 by 422 feet long. It's 18,990 square feet. The height and incline are the same as A1. We're only asking for permission today to build, well, A1, but we want to get the entire area. We don't know when we're going to build phases 2 and 3. It's a function of cost and the supply chain. Okay, we're asking for
Site plan approval for them.
site plan. That's true. We don't have. We're not going to ask for the construction permit after this for anything but phase 1. Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
apologize if it's out of order, but I'm sure council has advised you with respect to the periods of protection under site plan approval.
Correct.
Vis-à-vis how long it might take ultimately to
Correct.
do the installation and the construction of phase 2 and 3.
Obviously,
So-
we have to do it within 2 years and 3 one-year extensions.
One-year extensions,
Mr.
exactly.
Mr. Marr is aware of that.
We are aware, and if we go beyond that, we would come back before the board.
For new approvals, understood.
Correct.
Thank you.
No, thanks for the clarification.
Certainly. So phase 3 is C1. It's the same incline, same dimensions as B1, just a duplicate. Okay? The canopy heights are all the same. The intention of this is to have as much duplication as we can throughout that. So we asked about sound. So the canopies will generate less than 65 dBA sound during the day, which meets the requirements of 35-14.1.n.2.d, the City of Summit Development Regulations, ordinance and state requirements of NJAC 7:29-1.2. The reality is, they're not going to make anywhere near this sound because the string inverters today don't make a significant amount of sound. And then the canopies don't produce sound at night. There was a question about fire safety. The units are standalone, not associated with the building, so there's no risk of propagating a fire to a building. In the unlikely event that would occur, they will be installed per the National Electric Code with respect to electrical protection devices, overcurrent, and all the requirements that the construction officials will be looking for. They'll be subject to the construction application. They'll be installed at a clearance so that it won't impede the fire department response because the minimum height, I should have gone back to that exhibit, apologies.
So we're back at A4 now.
Now we're on exhibit A4. The minimum height is at 13'6". So in the event that there's a vehicle under here, a fire truck could drive right through the area unimpeded. Okay, so the 24-foot height and the incline is designed to maximize the electrical output of the canopies. The 45-foot width is so that a car here, and here, and a car on this end can be covered at each end by the canopy itself. So it's not in the drive lane, it's at the edges of the current parking. That's why they're 45 feet wide. And I already described it, but this little kick at the end of the canopy, 7.2 degree tilt, then only a 3 degree tilt is designed if there's snow and ice accumulation that would slide down that if it melted during the day and be stopped. And then again, there's rain gutters built into the canopies to capture that and direct the water as Langen described. 45 feet. And then our landscape architect's going to talk about where they fit within the site and the incident angle of the sun and relative to any potential for glare. And then we described we're installing EV charging underneath of them. Then to answer the question, I say too many things and Councilor Moore is going to want to pull me back.
Answer the question I answered.
To answer the question about why they're there. So when we have EV charging, we have cables associated with the EV charging. They really don't lead themselves to being in a parking space where cars are nose to nose. Because then people run over the cables. Even if there's cable management systems, people park farther away from them. They run into them. They do things like that. BMS, we've installed EV charging all across our network, across the world, and it's really beneficial if the EV charger is set back into an island by about 18 to 24 inches, and then there's a concrete bumper that stops the person's car from running into that. And it really leads itself to being in an island. That's why they're there. Then the foundations for the canopies are 36 inches in diameter. The parking lot that we have there today, if we were to insert those things in the middle of the parking lot where cars are nose to nose, they wouldn't be lined up where 4 parking spots, wouldn't be a center spot. We'd have to totally redesign the parking. And again, people's cars would then hang out into the drive lane. They would strike these. We'd have all types of problems with people hitting those things. So it's the best solution is to put it within an island to solve those issues. Sound of a pad-mounted transformer was asked. So these are standard pad-mounted transformers that are everywhere throughout the community. They're not generating any appreciable noise. The hum that they make is wonderful to me and music to my ears. I'm a power engineer. But they don't make any appreciable noise.
And Mr. Moore, also the siting of the canopies was also to maximize the light.
Absolutely. So we're hanging the light fixtures
No, I meant the receipt of the light
Oh,
from the sun.
absolutely, sure. That's why they're on a southerly facing, like most solar canopies are on a southerly facing exposure to maximize the capture of the sun's energy.
Thank you. That concludes Mr. Marr's direct testimony. He's obviously here to answer any additional questions.
Any members of the board have questions for Mr. Marr? Yeah, Rick?
May I have a quick follow-up? I appreciate the answer, both answers. Thank you, sincerely. However, and by the way, I don't want to say anything that would jeopardize this initiative, which is commendable in the extreme. I mean, putting solar panels over the parking is a wonderful initiative, and the company and the individuals on the team should all be commended for it. I'd like to say that before I say what I'm going to say next, which is it's a little bit disappointing that we're hearing about phase one only now. And I understand the supply chain. We've even had this conversation walking around, so it's not a new thing. And hopefully that'll be alleviated with more domestic production, with heightened availability of all the components that make this possible. So I'm hoping that phases 2 and 3 will be upon us in short order. But one thing that was in the report was the overall number of parking spaces for BMS employees. And if that number is correct in this write-up, it's over 3,000, something like 3,650.
We're not changing any parking
Right,
spaces.
which is understandable.
Correct.
But the world has changed a little bit since COVID. Are there 3,650 cars parked there these days? I'm told never to ask a question you don't know the answer to, and I honestly don't know.
I don't have
But
an
I
answer to
would
that
think
question, to
that
be
probably
candid
there are
with
fewer, either because of remote working, carpooling, public transit availability with shuttles, as we've talked about. My point is that the geometry of the parking lot, notwithstanding the excellent point made by the counselor that the tree canopy to the south might impact the location of the road that will go in, that will cover shade approximately, well, exactly 96 cars. Out of 3,650 cars, the canopy that's being proposed in phase 1 covers 96 cars. What I'd like to respectfully suggest is, in phase 1, you look at the plan again for these 96 cars, consider the angle of incidence, and if we hear about that from the landscape architect, great. I don't know how large the trees are to the south that are going in fresh, but if they're really shading the new solar panels anytime soon, I'd be surprised. And just think about for phase 1.
Is there something, what's there?
I don't know if it's a cockroach or.
Lantern bug, good call. We're talking about lighting and electrical.
Mr. Moore, please.
Well done.
I can do one thing.
I think that was a grasshopper.
I'll say all that again, no.
I don't know how large
Ms.
the trees are to the
Yeah,
south that are going
yeah.
in fresh, but
Right.
if they're really shading
You
the
got it.
new.
Yeah, so, Mr. Moore, all I'm saying is if it were the geometry of putting in a new island between the cars that in that middle southern tier, I don't know how to describe it because it's not numbered, but the one that's just below the one where the canopy will go, that's to say this one. What I would say in your shoes is that there's just no way of putting in an island here.
There isn't a
Unless you
potential
take out these spaces,
Right.
which are only 54 in number out of 3,650. So my question, the first question is, if you have 2,000 people coming in cars, approximately, I'm guessing, 3,000, 1,000, there's some number that I dare say isn't filling up every space. Could you hypothetically lose 54 spaces and make it easier to insert an island?
That would put us in a parking variance condition. And when we come back, if we
And
come
you'd
back
have to
from
ask
other
the zoning board
buildings, we
for a
just
variance.
can't take that chance.
Repeat, one speaker, please. And when we come back,
We can't have a parking variance condition that could endanger future development of the site, which we don't know what that is yet, but we can't put ourselves in that kind of situation.
Isn't BMS overparked by a lot currently? I think you have a lot more parking places. If I remember from prior applications, I think you have a lot more parking places.
Well, we also have a
than
general
required.
development plan that requires those parking spaces to be available in order for us to continue to build on the campus if we decide to do so.
Okay. So you're
So
not.
we really honestly would not want to give up existing parking that is hard to come by. Let's just be candid about that one.
Asked and answered. So, I just would like to say for the minutes and for the record, it's regrettable that the solar canopies have to go where there are trees now, when it seems to me that, but for perhaps easy variance on this parking count to reflect reality, there's a question of restriping and creating a new island. And that would pertain potentially for the other two phases as well, not just for the first phase.
I'll answer your first question about the multiple phasing. We hope to proceed with all three phases at the same time. It's a function of whether or not we can get the materials
All right.
and how much it costs.
Okay, and I'll defer further questions until the landscape portion on particularly the question of whether the trees to be planted in the south will, of the parking lot that we're describing, will differentially shade solar panels in one row or the
It's
other.
likely that the existing
Existing
buffer
canopy.
that's there,
All right.
because some of those trees are very tall,
All right.
and that they would impact the solar canopies.
Again, I started by saying I wouldn't want to say anything to dissuade you from this effort.
Understood.
And so take all this with a grain of salt, especially with the city forester in the room. Hate to do anything that encourages taking down trees that are healthy.
Those are good questions. Very good
Just one
questions.
question.
Yes, Jay?
Mr. Mark, can you tell us again how many charging stations there will be in all three phases? I think you said 44 in the first phase. How many in total will there be?
So what's before the construction officials is a permit request for 44 today. The system that we've designed can accommodate 108. They are under canopy phase 1, 2, and A3. A3 is handicap parking. There's no ordinance requirement or any requirement for us to provide EV charging there, but we believe that a handicapped person could own an EV, so we provide EV charging for them as well. The system is designed so that it can build out, because again, those transformers and switchgear that we had to buy a year and a half ago that hasn't shown up yet, is designed to accommodate 108. And someone pointed out correctly that there's 99 here. Okay, or 98 spaces, I believe, is the total number of spaces that are in that area. And then we've got 8 up here, so we have capacity for several more. We don't know where they would go. We would determine whether or not we need to build more EV charging underneath of phase 2 or phase 3 as time goes on, and we determine whether or not there's a requirement for our employees and our consultants that come to the site to use EV charging.
Any other members of the board have questions? Mr. Moore, I have a question with regard to the transformer. You said that the sound of the transformer would be de minimis or not noticed. You did mention that perhaps, I guess, older models of solar panels had a 65 decibel level, which, being a car enthusiast as I am, that's riding in a luxury car at about 70 miles an hour on a freeway. It's about 65 dBAs, so, or slightly more. Do you have a sense of what the transformer in decibels would be?
I'm not an acoustician. I've got a pad-mounted transformer in the front of my house that's been there for years, and I don't hear it.
Yeah, I just wanted to get an answer to Mr. Hiscano's question.
I don't know how to answer that, to be honest with you. We could ask an acoustician to get us that information if we need to.
Yeah, if you could do that, I think it'd be helpful, thanks. Yep,
Okay.
thanks. Any other questions from the board? Of this witness, members of the public, professionals, do we have any questions of this witness from our board professionals?
I do not, no.
Yep.
I
Mr.
do not
Finn?
either.
All right. Members of the public, any questions for Mr. Marr? Well, please come forward, sir. Please state your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Tim Smith, last name S-M-I-T-H. I live at 247A Kent Place Boulevard. Thanks for all of the exhibits that you've shown and for the particularly the color rendering of the parking lot. Our house abuts that parking lot directly, so we have a very good view into, there's a loading dock back there. We know where the existing mechanical area is as well. I think that's an HVAC center that comes through, and it generates a hum. You can hear the hum. It sounds like there's a freeway back there, is about how loud it is currently. And I just wanted to ask a question about the 65 dB per unit, because I think that's roughly the sound that's coming from the HVAC units already, which is noticeable by my neighbors and I for sure. Is that 65 dB per unit, and how many units would that be total?
So the 65 dB is basically saying we're going to meet the ordinance at the property line for the total sound of all the contributors on the campus at that side, including what we're installing with the solar canopies.
Got it. So that's the sum of all of the equipment that's there
Correct.
currently. But there will be additional sound beyond what's there now, is reasonable to suggest?
Minimal.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to note that there is a fair amount of sign.
Technically, any testimony would have to be under oath at the public comment portion unless the chair wishes to modify the procedure, in which case I would swear you in, but I would want I'm sure we would all want your comments to count as testimony. So whichever way the chair wishes to proceed.
We
if you
make
could
it
hold
distinguish
or-
between asking questions of a witness, and then
Yeah.
at the very end, we have
Comments.
members of the public come forward and make statements about what their thoughts and ideas are, so that we kind of bisect or bifurcate the two.
Okay, that's fair. I can wait till the end.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr.
Thank
Smith.
you.
We appreciate it. All right, Mr. Hiscano.
You were first.
Oh, all right, other members of the public, please. come forward.
Okay, just a quick question. Dwight Hiscano again. You said you measured decibels from the edge of the parking lot or the actual edge of the property?
So
Where
the edge of the property line is the New Jersey ordinance that we're obligated to meet. and
Okay,
that's-
so on the outside of the buffer then,
Um,
correct? Or on the inside of the buffer, because there's a big difference.
At the property line is where we're obligated to meet the ordinance levels, and it's that simple.
Okay, which is the outside of the buffer, correct?
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Sir, did he answer your question, or would you like to come forward?
Yeah, Gordon Stewart, 54 Evergreen Road, Stewart. Again, it's another question about the transformer noise. I live right close to where that is, and people have talked about like the visual screening. I think the implication earlier was talked about visual screening. What about noise screening? Is it built in a way that like sort of sends the noise one direction rather than like allowing it to come out?
Mr. Cortese described, I'm sorry. Yeah, Sarati, yeah, sorry. That we're installing the transformers in an area that's intentionally shielded. It is going to adsorb some of the acoustic characteristics of those transformers. They're standard pad-mounted transformers. They're throughout the community, everywhere.
Okay.
They make minimal amount. The major transformers, the main incoming service that's at the opposite side of the campus, are barely intelligible transformers as well, and they are literally orders of magnitude larger in size and capacity than from what we're putting here. Like I said, this is almost to a residential size pad-mounted transformer.
Okay. Sounds like to be drowned out by the other noise.
That's right. But it's built into a berm, right? It's sunken below, as Mr. Fay questioned.
It's not going to be below grade.
Yeah.
It's going to be at grade because there's a berm there
Yeah,
that is actually designed to minimize the cooling tower's sound that is
Okay.
behind it,
yeah.
which honestly make significantly more acoustics, and they are shielded by that berm today. So it's find a place for this transformer is in that location. And a pad-mounted transformer, I'm sure they're all throughout the community. They make minimal amount of noise. If they make noise, it's indicative of them failing, to be candid with you. So if there's a transformer that's making loud noise, that's a standard residential transformer, that's usually a good indication that it's about to fail or will fail. So,
All right. Yeah. Question, please come forward. Question of this witness, Mr. Marr. And state your name and address, please.
Sure. Francesca McBride, McBride, 249 Kent Place Boulevard. Also with the noise, is that going to be a constant hum all day, all night? I know we have the cooling in the summertime, and that's a constant. So I'm just curious if that's going to be a constant throughout the winter. And yeah.
So,
I think what Mr. Maher said, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're not really gonna hear this. That it's a he just said it's a residential level transformer. And if they make noise, it's because they're about to fail. They're all throughout the community, that you don't even hear them, and that's gonna be this one.
that's what I would say, to be candid. The only thing that might produce a high-frequency sound is the string inverters that are only available when the sun is on them during the day. Okay, and they create potentially create a high-frequency noise that's very limited in its distance. It would be step 3 or 4 feet away from them, you don't hear them. Okay, so the solar panels don't make any noise at all at night, as a concern, if that's the concern. The only produced sound that I could say is going to be relevant to this, and directionally, because of the tilt and where the string inverters are, it's actually pushing away from the Kent Place Boulevard area, because the inverters that convert the DC that the solar panels make into AC that we use are tucked high in the steel, and then they generate, that's what I'm saying, can make a high frequency noise. Noise is subjective, but it's 3 feet away from them. You don't know that they're, you have to get right up against, it's like, is my refrigerator running is the best analogy I can say. You don't know it unless you're standing directly in front of it. Okay? That would be my answer.
Okay. And the transformer?
The transformer, like I said, and Councilor Moore described, it's about the size of a residential type transformer that's sitting on the ground and makes minimal noise. Again, within 5 feet of it, you won't even hear it. So I doubt that the concerns that have been raised about it being contributing to the background acoustics of the campus is really immaterial. We've gone to significant lengths to reduce challenges with increasing the buffer, with all those things. And the other thing is we're putting nice quiet EVs back there as opposed to cars that make, other cars that potentially make lots of noise. So I'm not saying the EVs don't make noise when they back up because it's required by law, but other than that, they're very quiet. So.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions of the public? Mr. Moore, your next witness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. My next witness is Ms. Karen Murphy. Ms. Murphy, can you give your education, licenses, and professional experience?
Sure. So I'm a professional lighting designer. I've been a lighting designer for 34 years. I'm the director of lighting at HDR. And step away from the noise. I have LC certification, which is a lighting certification. I'm a professional lighting designer with the International Association of Lighting Designers. And I've
been
appeared
qualified before this board,
I have,
correct?
yes.
Yes.
And
So-
I'm sorry, just for the expertise, it's lighting planner, it's not an engineer?
No, it's an engineer. I have an
Okay.
architectural engineering degree. My certification is lighting certified. It's an LC certification.
Okay, so you would be seeking to be accepted as an expert in the lighting engineer or lighting
Lighting engineer.
engineer? Okay, I heard the term planner, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Murphy. And if you can just refer to each exhibit by label when you're talking so they correlate to what we entered in the record, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've created a series of exhibits because I know there was a lot of plans that you were given, right? Essentially, I want to kind of give you an overall idea of what we're doing with the lighting. The idea is to replace all the lights on this campus with energy efficient LEDs, creating a more cohesive campus in doing so, as opposed to just directly replacing one from one, where there's a couple problem areas, some things we want to unify and improve on the site, and so doing. So the very first thing that I did, probably over a year ago, was go out and survey the site. And I wrote a report for the client and gave recommendations. This is how I think you should improve the site. Here are some areas that need, additional lighting or different types of lighting. The client was very receptive to those ideas and said, go ahead, put together a plan. So this is the culmination of that. So it started with a comprehensive view of the entire campus, which is why it's kind of so extensive and a little overwhelming. And I know you asked for quantities, and that's why I brought my cheat sheet up here, so I have all the quantities with me. But I wanted to kind of step back to kind of give you that overview of where we are. So the first exhibit, which is A5, is all of the existing building and wall-mounted fixtures that are on the campus. Every single one of those is going to be replaced. The green dots are where those fixtures currently occur. This is a summary of all the different types of fixtures that are currently mounted on those buildings right now. You can see a lot of them have vertical lenses. They're creating vertical brightness. Again, one of the things that I know neighbors complain about, right, when they see vertical brightness. We are replacing all of those, and I'm going to turn this to Exhibit A6. This is all the new wall and canopy mounted light fixtures. They will all be full cutoff fixtures that are mounted on the walls. The ones that you see with lenses are mounted on the underside of a canopy at a loading dock or at a building entry. So the lens is actually parallel to the ground. It's not going to be vertical. So that's the summary, and I know you asked for counts, so I'm going to put on my glasses and give you the counts for those. Okay, so we have in this, again, it's a direct one-for-one replacement, 11 flood packs that were located on the top of the buildings, usually on the roofs, shining down. 11 flood packs we are deleting, and they are not going to be replaced. We are putting in 59 type F fixtures, and this all relates to the fixture schedule that was in your package. So there's 59 type F, 28 type F1, 6 type H, 5 type H1, 1I, 1J, 2J1, 11K, and 3L. And then we're going to move to the bollards. And so Exhibit A7 is the existing bollards on campus. You can see where they are, and you can see the assortment of different bollards that are out there today. And I will say you will notice the biggest difference. There's a lot of bollards in this area. Which is just north, I guess, of S7. And then when we move to Exhibit A8, those bollards no longer exist, but we are continuing the bollards along the interior path. And again, so part of the campus unification, we want bollards to symbolize the sidewalks where the employees walk between buildings, exercise, it is pedestrian circulation. And we are leaving the poles to the parking lots and the sidewalks that are along the parking lots and roadways. We didn't want to duplicate. There's no reason to have a bollard and a pole. The pole can light the sidewalk just like it's lighting the road. So we're trying to duplicate or eliminate duplications of fixtures and use them in the most aesthetically pleasing and just even cohesive nature. So people it's very clear where there's going to be pedestrian and vehicular interchanges and where it's just a pedestrian sidewalk. The other thing that I should note is all the building mounted fixtures and all the bollards are going to be 3,000 Kelvin. Now that is different than what the GDP allows. The GDP for this site would allow or permits 4,000 K. We thought that it was the right thing to do to use the warmer color temperature on the bollards and in the building, on the buildings specifically, because most of what the neighbors see is vertical illumination. It's not so much the horizontal illumination on the blacktop, but any lighting that's on the building. And even though they're full cutoff fixtures, they're on the wall shining down. So below the fixture, the wall is going to be lit. And so having a warmer light is less attractive to your eye at night. Like it doesn't grab your attention the same way a cooler, bluer light does. And so all of the building mounted and all of the bollards are going to be 3,000 Kelvin. Oh, let me give you the counts before I move on to the next exhibit. Okay, so the bollards, we are replacing 29 bollards. We are deleting 29 bollards and eliminating 23 bollard bases. So there were 23 bollard bases where there was no bollard installed. The base was there, but the bollard was missing. And we are adding 52 bollards. And moving on to Exhibit A9, this is the poles. So the existing poles, and you can see all the different colors on here. There are poles that are 15 feet, 18 feet, 22 feet, and there's even two that are 50 foot high. There's an example of all the different poles that are out there now. On Exhibit A10, what we've done is we've hatched out the area where there's been a direct one-for-one replacement of the fixture there at 15 foot. That we didn't, it's essentially a maintenance thing, right? We're replacing it one-for-one. The remaining lights here are part of this application because they required an additional fixture or a relocation of a fixture or two in order to get those safety levels that we talked about before. And in order to move the bollards away from this area and use poles. So that's kind of the reason, that's what's going on there now. So again, this is the existing conditions for the fixtures that are part of the application this evening. And then when we go to Exhibit A11, this is what we're proposing. So the green dots are the new 15 foot, everything's going to be 15 foot, and that's to the height of the fixture above grade, not necessarily a 15-foot pole because they're on bases. So it'd be a 13-foot pole, 2-foot base for a total height of 15 feet. Under the canopy, we have a suspended light fixture that will hang at 15 feet under the canopy, and that's in the middle of the canopy over the aisles. So this is what what we're kind of moving to in the end. So hopefully that'll help you visualize the different steps. And let me just give you the numbers for the poles. So there are 72 pole-mounted fixtures that will be directly replaced. We are deleting 8 poles, including 2 that are 50 foot high. And we are adding 24 poles. As far as
Oh, and Ms. Murphy, just because this was pointed out, and I believe both the engineers and planners reports, the details correctly show we're all at 15 feet, but we'll correct the notes both for the poles and for the canopy-mounted lights, correct?
Correct. And that's actually my last exhibit. That's my last sheet. Yes. So yes, that is true. For the canopies themselves, there are existing double-headed poles in these locations. They will be coming down and replaced with this fixture. So for the phase 1, this initial solar canopy, we are deleting 5 double-headed poles. Sorry, I'm on the wrong spot. Sorry, 4 double-headed poles. So for phase 1, we're deleting 4 double-headed poles, and we're adding 6 full cutoff pendant lights that'll be mounted at 15 feet. Now for phase 2, and I have we have the calculations that will be coming up for all of these phases too, because I thought it was important, right? Phase 1, this is what's before you now. I want to make sure that the illumination works in all the phases, even if phase 2 and phase 3 don't happen. So that's why the lighting plan is broken down. Even though it's really a solar canopy phasing, the lighting will also change when those additional canopies are installed. And we wanted to make sure the illumination levels work for everyone. So again, this is the total illumination plan. The red ISO curves are 0.1 foot candles. So you can see as we get to the edge of the property, we are already down, at the edge of the parking lot, we are keeping that at 0.1 foot candles.
Ms. Murphy, can you just give the exhibit your?
Oh, sure, sorry, this is A12. So we are on exhibit A12. The next line in is 1 foot candle. The line in from that would be 2 foot candles. So we're again, talking very low light levels in the parking lot. A13 shows the addition of phase 2. And again, the light levels stay uniform throughout. With A2, or with phase 2, we are deleting 4 double-headed light poles and adding 6 pendant full cutoff fixtures. That's this blue that you're seeing. And then on exhibit A14, that would be phase 3 of the solar canopies, which would be the addition of that section and the smaller lots. And in that instance, in phase 3, we are deleting 5 double-headed lights, 2 single-headed light poles, and adding 10 full cutoff pendant fixtures. The fixtures along the edge of the property, I wanted to add this graphics because when we started this project, and it's a relatively new optical design by the manufacturer, that they've really been able to limit the amount of backlight. So this is an actual fixture. This is your standard pole-mounted fixture, shows the lighting of a parking lot and the light that spills out behind the pole. The new optics, which we have specified for all the fixtures that are along the perimeter of a parking lot, right? We wouldn't use this in the middle because we wanted to go both directions. But all the fixtures that are along the perimeter of the parking lot or a roadway would have this optic on it, and you can see the vast improvement that just technology today has brought forward in the LED design. And I'm going to step out of the way. This is exhibit A15. So again, a lot of people are used to this, and I want them to kind of see this is the technology that's out there now, and this is what we're using. And then just to confirm, A16 is our sheet EL701, which was part of your set. And yes, there were errors in the remarks column about the height. These will be changed to 13 feet. The pole itself is 13 feet. The overall height of the fixture is 15. And the same thing with the pendant mount fixture, the wrong height was given there. The details are correct, clearly showing the 2 foot and the 15 foot to the pole. This remarks column wasn't updated, so we will update that.
Okay, good.
That concludes Ms. Murphy's direct testimony. She's
All right.
here to answer any questions that the board or its professionals.
Any members of the board have questions of Ms. Murphy? Yep, sure.
I do.
Andy?
Thank you for that presentation. I have a question about A15. You talked about the standard versus BLC and the technology difference. Can you explain what exactly the difference is between those two?
It's the optical design of the light fixture itself. So before, there used to be, they'd call it a house side shield that you could get for fixtures, which was really nothing more than a piece of metal that's stuck down behind, trying to kick the light out and back. But with LEDs, they're individual optics. So now, as opposed to having a lens where it's just throwing light in a bubble, if you will, or just diffusing it out, they can specifically target each array in a different angle. And that's why they get really good photometric distribution by kind of tuning each individual diode, if you will,
Great,
with the
thank you.
reflector.
Appreciate it.
Any other members? Yeah, Jay?
Maybe I didn't understand you, but you mentioned phasing under the canopies. Will the balance of the site be, will the lighting be changed all at once for the balance of the site, or will that be phased as well?
No, so the lighting will only change when the canopy comes. So that's why we have the three. That's why we had all 3 photometrics presented, so that at phase 1, if they only put in that one canopy, the other, and I'm going to turn back a couple exhibits here. So on A11, this is phase one. So what will happen is these lights will go in because this solar canopy is going in. These poles will be replaced. So these will be the new LED poles. These new poles may come down in a year to put in the solar canopy there. When we just don't know what the timing difference between phase one and phase two is going to be. So that's why I wanted to kind of present all scenarios. If this is the only thing built, these will still be replaced.
That's a
Thank you.
great question.
Actually, the point of my question was the balance of the site. How will that be phased, or will that all be done at once?
According to Mr. Maurer, he said they're doing it all at once. Again, my client's job to to determine how they want to pay for it, how much they want to do at one
Thank you.
time.
May I ask one quick
Yeah,
question?
sure, Rick.
Great presentation, and it's also very commendable that the fixtures are much more efficient than they were a generation or even 5 years ago. They take less energy. If we're looking at the big picture with full build-out, phase 3 is all done, whether the fixtures are all in except for the canopies that are added later, understood. How much energy do they draw compared to how much energy is generated by the solar canopies after phase 3? Is that an easy calculation to make? And I'm not sure, whether it's a lighting question or an electrical engineering or a client question or a legal question. But the question is, order of magnitude, do the solar panels have a significant impact in reducing the energy demand on the grid for the campus?
Mr. Mark, he's previously sworn and qualified.
All three phases of the solar canopies will produce roughly a megawatt of electrical energy, okay? I don't know off the top of my head what that LED lighting is using, but we're replacing a litany of different types of fixtures. So the LED lighting is also going to reduce the demand on the grid as a result as well.
Well, that's
Is that your
exactly the
question?
question. It's going in the right direction. Very
Oh,
wonderful.
absolutely.
But,
Yeah, I mean, BMS
if
is
you
committed
have
to
all
sustain-
the- I'm sorry.
BMS is committed to sustainable efforts.
Well,
So-
the more solar panels, the better, if it's a question of whether it will cover the energy demands of the campus lighting, if nothing else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got one other question. The exhibit you had with the 2 photos of the light that we were looking at a couple of minutes ago. Yes, perfect, thank you. So my question is that this a photograph of the same place at 2 actual different times with 2 different light fixtures, or is the second one on the right a rendering of what it could look like?
No, it's actually, so this is the exact same location. The manufacturer changed the fixture out and took this. So
Okay, thank you.
you can kind of see the tree if you get close. You can see the two trunks here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Again, I didn't take the fixture, but it certainly looks like it's the exact same location to me.
Any members of our staff, any members of our professionals have questions for this witness?
No questions.
She answered everything that was in my memo, so.
I tried to be thorough.
Yeah, that's good. Members of the public, any questions of this witness? Yes, please come forward, Mr. Hiscano.
Me again. You mentioned that the bollards will all be warmer balanced, 300 or 3,000 Kelvin.
3,000 Kelvin.
The pole lights, will they be daylight, or will they also be 3,000 Kelvin?
They're 4,000 Kelvin, which
Okay,
is
so
what the
they'll-
GDP is.
all right, so
Not
they'll be
daylight.
warmer.
Daylight's actually, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, so daylight is technically 5,000 Kelvin. We're not going that high. Or 4,000, which is what's allowed in the GDP.
Okay.
And there's another reason for that, because we wanted to get as low as possible with the average foot candles. And your eye is in meso-optic vision as opposed to scotopic vision when you're at night in dark situations. Meso-optic vision responds much better to blue than it does to the warmer color temperatures. And so as a lighting professional, I feel it's a safer environment if you're getting into those really low light level conditions to use a bluer light than to use a warmer light.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I hope the board is taking notes because after quite a few disappointments with Bristol Myers Squibb, and I'm sorry to say this, the noise was horrible and still is at times really difficult to adjust to and annoying. I'm sorry to say that. The buffer around the property is also, my family owns a tree farm and things shouldn't have been done the way they are. But today I looked out back and you guys are planting trees, which is a really good sign, and I'm really happy to see that. But I'm really, really encouraged to hear all of what you said, and I hope this is a trend. I've been really concerned with light pollution. The 50-foot poles, they're shining into my child's bedroom, into our bathroom. The bright LED bank lights you have in the back lots, they actually come into our kitchen at night. And I'm sure all the neighbors around us are suffering the same thing. So I'm very encouraged to hear this. I hope it's a trend. If you step outside, you can see how poor the lighting is in this area. And I don't mean poor by dim, I mean excessively bright. Look across the street at one of the most beautiful buildings in town, and it looks like a prison yard at night. Look at the pathway going to the senior center here. Those lights are way too bright. You shouldn't have to squint when you're walking down a pathway like that. And your eyes will adjust to that, and they won't adjust to the darkness around you. You can see I'm obsessed with this topic. So I just hope that this is a trend, and I hope the town can follow suit. That's it, but thank you very much. Very informative.
Mr.
Don't go anywhere yet, Mr.
Go, Mr.
Chair.
Scotto.
I think they want to swear you in.
Mr.
because
Warren,
of all the
Mr. Warren
statements.
needs to swear you in.
We can legally, retroactively swear you in, so we can go. So do you swear to God or affirm that all of the testimony that you just gave, as well as the testimony that you may give in the near future, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I think so, yes.
Good. I'll take it as an affirmative, and then,
All right.
that way you don't have to repeat what you said if you don't want to during the public comment section.
All right. Any other members of the public have questions of this witness? All right.
Mr. Chairman, can we take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, I guess we're here. How about Bridget, maybe 5-minute break, 10-minute break? Yep. Why don't we do that? 10-minute break, and we'll come back for your next witness, Mr. Moore. Yep. Mhm.
Another witness.
10-minute recess, and the board's resuming after our 10-minute recess. And Mr. Moore?
Thank
your
you,
next
Mr.
witness.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman, before I call Mr. Cortez, the applicant heard that there was some concern among the public, particularly about the sound of the transformer and the inverter, so the applicant would offer as a condition of approval, if the board sees fit to grant an approval, that we would do a post-construction acoustical study in that area.
Oh, that sounds very good.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to confirm, is that a one-time post-installation?
Yes.
Sound audit, noise audit?
Yes.
And that would just confirm compliance with the 65 dBA daytime and 50 dB, I'm sorry, 50 dBA
And
nighttime.
they don't work, they don't run at night, so.
Oh, they don't run at night at all?
No.
Okay, so it would just be the,
Just to cover the concern about the transformers.
Yes, we'll do it at night as well.
okay. Okay, and that's just a one-time each
Yes.
to comply with the NJAC 7:29 and the corresponding municipal ordinance, correct?
Absolutely, Mr. Warner.
We got it, thank you, Mr.
Great, that's good. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll call my next witness, Mr. Anthony Cortese, our project landscape architect.
Hi, I'm Anthony Cortese.
Mr. Cortese, A, you gotta get to a mic. And B, let's have your education, licenses, and professional experience for the record.
All right, this is on. Yes, Anthony Cortese, Senior Landscape Architect with HDR. I've been working there for 18 years. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science from Rutgers University in 2005. I am a licensed landscape architect in the state of New Jersey, LEED certified, and I have qualified as an expert before this board before.
Any board members have any questions of this witness? No, please go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Cortese.
Okay, Exhibit A19. This is just to show the location of the buffer, highlighted, the landscape buffer, highlighted in with this little circular area. So that's the 125-foot landscape buffer. And really, we just wanted to highlight the location with that exhibit. Exhibit A17, because CAD doesn't do the buffer justice, we just wanted to show and depict the forested condition of the buffer through an aerial photograph. Okay. And Exhibit A19 shows a few images taken from the southwest corner of the property, number one, looking towards the BMS campus. Barely visible in the background, some of the buildings, S12. And from location number two, looking towards the buffer, you can see the fence and a little bit of the campus through the buffer as well.
And Mr. Cortese, this is not photo enhanced or anything. This is just a photo of the actual conditions today
Yes,
before we.
Yes, these photos
This
were
is
taken.
before we're going to do the increased landscaping that you're going to be
Correct, yes, these
testifying
photos were
to.
taken in
I'm sorry, you
September.
have to wait until each other finish so I can get
Apologies.
a clear record. Please repeat the question.
So this is not photo enhanced. This is an actual photographic condition of what's there today, correct?
That's correct. These photos were taken in September of this year.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm transitioning to Exhibit A20. Exhibit A20 shows the work that has already been done to date. In the fall of 2022 and spring of 2023, in blue and red, showing red shows the work done in the fall of 2022, and blue shows the work done in the spring of 2023. Now, the reason for the work in the first place, it might be said, just to lay the groundwork for the story, the emerald ash borer is an exotic invasive pest that was likely brought over in about 2002 in shipping containers from Asia. It was first spotted in Michigan. Since then, it has killed tens of millions of ash trees across the country and the Northeast in 30 states. It attacked the ash trees in the buffer here. Once it attacks them, 2 years, they go into decline. 3 to 4 years, they're dead. So there was a number of dead ash trees on the property. As the dead trees create a safety concern, especially considering where they may or may not be located with regard to the property line. For the sake of safety, the buffer was walked by BMS with Mr. Linson, and the trees that were identified that needed to be removed have been removed in those two phases, the fall of 2022 and the spring of 2023. So that's the reason for the tree removals in the buffer in the first place. And also as part of this same phase, so that's 79 trees total were removed. In this same phase, BMS also planted to provide some immediate relief and immediate screening, evergreen screening. They planted emerald green arborvitae, or green giant arborvitae, I believe. They're 10 to 12 feet installed, which is a pretty big size. Those will provide immediate screening year-round as due to their evergreen nature.
I'm sorry, did you give a number to how many?
114.
114.
So those were already planted as part of the fall 2022 and spring of 2023 phase. Okay, so that was to provide the immediate relief and approval, but there were still gaps left by the trees coming down. So to reforest those gaps, we're using native species. The plant list was developed in conjunction with Mr. Linson, the forester. They're a native tree species. There are shade trees to reforest the tall canopy trees. There are evergreen trees to provide screening year-round. We're using the green giant arborvitae and Ilex opaca, which is American holly. So that'll provide evergreen screening year-round. We're also providing understory trees, such as eastern redwood, dogwood. These are flowering trees native to the understory of canopy forested areas. In addition to that, the nice thing about the understory trees is they're usually multi-trunked. They're lower in nature, and they're going to provide more eye-level screening than a shade tree would, because you can see past the trunk of a shade tree. In addition to that, we're also providing shrubs, a mix of evergreen and deciduous shrubs, and they have they're being selected for native, but also ornamental characteristics such as seasonal flowering, and several of the species, viburnum retidiphyllum, leatherleaf viburnum, that's evergreen. Calmia latifolia, mountain laurel, that's also evergreen. Let's see. Oh, and then let me just check my notes here. And last, we just wanted to portray some of the illustrative sections that depict the 125-foot forested buffer with relation to the solar canopies. Just
You
to
might want to say the number.
Yes, Exhibit A22. So these sections depict the relationship of the buffer, the residences, and the canopies. BMS is doing everything they can to shield the views. The placement of the trees and shrubs are such that in certain areas they hug the property line to foreshorten the view, so that if you place them too far away, you're still going to see around them, right? So they're placed closer to the property line. There's a selection of native trees and shrubs, as discussed earlier. But as you can see, there's a lot of foliage to look through. On top of that, the canopy, the angle of the canopies, as attested to by Mr. Maurer, is 7 degrees, so it's very shallow. That's really going to help minimize glare. The track of the sun, rising in the summertime, on the equinox, rising in the northeast, setting in the northwest. At noon, it's going to be directly south. In the wintertime, it'll rise in the southeast and set in the southwest. So it's always going to be, the sun is always going to be shining from the south. That's why the panels are canted to the south to maximize the solar gain. But furthermore, since the sun is always shining from the south, the panels are not going to be reflecting the glare back at the residences in any appreciable manner. And furthermore, to minimize that to the greatest degree possible, we're planting evergreen tree species between the residences and the canopies. Let me check.
I think you've covered it, Mr. Cortese.
Think so?
And that concludes Mr. Cortese's direct testimony. He's now here to answer questions of the board, your professionals, and the public.
Great. Any board members have questions of this witness? Yes, sir, Paul.
The Jolly Green Giants that you mentioned, they planted,
Yes.
how long does it take them to grow?
They're installed at a 10 to 12. They're installed at a 10 to 12 foot
And what
height.
will they grow to?
They can, excuse me, they can typically grow to about 20 feet.
Okay. And that takes about how long, do you think, to grow from 12 feet to 20 feet?
5 to 10 years.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Andy?
Yes, thank you. Approximately how many, you may not know this, maybe a number that can't be specified, but how many trees are you planting?
Oh, yeah, actually, I failed to mention that. I have that right here. So we've taken down, we removed 79 dead ashes, right? We're putting back a total, including the trees that were installed already, the 114 emerald, green giant arborvitae, including those and the new tree planting, 296. So it's a substantial figure. And then there's an additional 93, 94 shrubs that are being installed.
What's the rough acreage of that?
That I don't have. I don't have
All
that
right,
figure, I'm
that's-
sorry.
Get in the picture, though.
Any other members of the board? Rick?
Thank you as well for a great presentation. LB 201, which is the labeled as the Phase 2 buffer planting. At least the version we have without the pochette, without the shading, has every single tree elucidated, which is remarkable. The plant schedule on this drawing that we all received is very comprehensive. It shows, without labeling them, which are native species, which are not. It shows the caliper installed. It shows mature spread. What it doesn't show particularly well, at least maybe I'm just too dense to see it, are which are there already and which are new to be planted. I'm assuming they're all new to be planted.
Everything you see here, highlighted here, and here, is all new to be planted.
Well, I can't see that drawing
Oh,
from squat. I can see this drawing, which is the same one without the pochette.
it's the same one, yeah. I
schedule.
added the pochette.
So all the trees ranging from the red maple up top on your chart to the top of that drawing, to the swamp white oak at the bottom of the first tier, all those are new. And they're newly planted, they're not existing.
Correct.
Okay, because I'm trying to understand the point made before about the trees that are existing to the south of that parking lot, in the middle of that drawing to the south, which would potentially be shading the trees either now or eventually, shading the solar canopies now or at some point in the future, and trees grow. You know, I have a sapling in the south side of my house that was tiny when we moved there 40 years ago, and now it's towering over the house and certainly would shade any solar panels if they were on my house, and they can't be for that tree. So I understand that you don't want solar panels too close to a tall tree, but none of these trees are there yet, or are they?
Oh, there, yes. I will use 2 exhibits to illustrate that. Exhibit A17 shows the forested buffer. The whole buffer is forested currently. There were just the 79 trees that had to be removed.
Got it. So these trees on this plant schedule are replacing the ash?
Correct.
That, pure and simple. So the trees to the south, you're saying would potentially be shading solar panels if they were too far to the south in the parking lot?
Yes, yes. They're roughly 60 to 80 feet tall
That's
already.
significant. Got it. All right, well, that's what I was waiting to hear. You know the trees. Thank you.
Any other members of the board, questions, of this witness? Our board professionals, questions of this witness?
No, actually, Mr. Snykes from our office, our head landscape architect, had reviewed these plans, and he was satisfied with the information that was presented and the additional exhibits which he had asked for, which I'll tell him you presented that as well. He'll appreciate that. So we're satisfied with the proposed planting scheme.
Ms. Ruffey, any questions?
No, I have no further questions.
Okay, all right. Any members of the board have questions of this witness? No, let's just go ahead. We don't have to swear you in.
Quick question, will what you're planning now, will it be monitored in the years to come to ensure that they survive? Because I know that a lot of times tree planting efforts are, they plant them and then they ignore them. And I'm hoping that there'll be some follow-up studies to.
Actually, I'll call someone from Bristol Myers Squibb who's here, Ms. Geraldine Mayor, who can testify. You can swear at me later.
Did I swear? I didn't swear you in tonight, did I?
No.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Name and address, please, for the record.
An address? Okay. Geraldine Magner,
You're on.
M-A-G-N-E-R. And yes, so we have.
Ms. Magner, can you just give your position with Bristol Myers
Oh,
Squibb?
sorry. Senior Director of Facility Operations for the Summit Region.
And now I'll let you actually answer the question.
So yes, since we've taken over, since I have moved to this campus for oversight, we have set in place, working with the forester and some of the rest of the team, we have put a plan in place to first of all clean up the buffer, which is what we did, but then monitor, put in the additional plantings, and then continue to monitor biannually, annually, and hopefully still in partnership with the forester so that he can verify.
The trees that don't survive, will they be replaced?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chairman, could I, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
please.
I thought you were done.
Yep.
Are you worried? I had a quick question for her.
Okay.
If you don't, Ms. Michael. Or council, is there a time frame for the monitoring of the tree replacement? Usually there's there could be bonding, there could be a period of time, 2 years or more, for any trees that die or to be replaced, et cetera. So what's the time frame on this monitoring?
So the planting has commenced. We started last week, and that will probably go on until just after Thanksgiving. Then we'll do another walk through with John. Actually, we continue to do that on Thursdays when he's available. After that, it will probably be spring when it's next verified.
And I wasn't so much asking for the literally,
Oh.
the plans for monitoring of the process, but what's the time frame for the guarantee of replacing any and all diseased or dead trees?
Well, okay,
Is it ad infinitum? Is it in perpetuity? Is there a
Well,
time frame?
the supplier who would have supplied them and planted them has a 12-month warranty, but we commit to replacing them for as long as we need to.
As long as you're on the site?
Absolutely,
Okay,
without a doubt.
Thank you.
Good. Does the board have any questions of this witness? Or board professionals, any questions? And members of the public have questions of this witness? All right, sure, please. Mhm.
So,
I'm sorry, just need to give your name and address one more time.
yeah, I think I should be sworn in as well.
If you can ask a question, you don't have to be, but.
Oh, I'm gonna
We're about ready
do
to
more
move
than
into
ask
the
a
public
question.
statements section. Is your question, you have a specific question for her, or would you like to make a statement? I don't know whether we want to do what we did in the past, which is to let them do both, but.
Question or comment, which one?
Both.
Both.
So why don't you have a question, and then we'll go into the public comment period. So if you have a question for this
We have one
witness.
more witness.
Oh, you do? All right, okay. Well, then we're structured with a question just for this witness. We will do the public comment section next. After
Okay.
this witness, yeah.
I mean, I see my question as being very tied to what I want to comment upon,
Mhm.
which is the landscaping and what the What was your name again, sir?
Anthony Cortez.
Anthony
Yes.
Cortese had to say.
Yep,
And
okay, well,
also-
he's the landscape architect, let's ask him.
Okay.
Yep.
So the one thing that I heard you say that I'm actually surprised to hear is what you were talking about, the line of sight, planting stuff near so that like lower light doesn't get to houses, and then planting further away so that light does get to I'm not sure quite what I'm saying, but like the example I wanted to give was that in contact with Geraldine, I mentioned that there was a lot of light coming in, and that particularly from cars in the parking lot, and like to their credit, the next day someone popped out and planted 5 of those green giants that you were talking about. However, the sighting of them was like they were just basically, it was almost like, yeah, well, let's go and dump some trees in the woods to keep them quiet. There didn't seem to be much thought going into where these trees should go. They were like literally just tossed in the middle of the wood. They don't do anything whatsoever to mitigate the light problem that comes in from cars. Had they been closer inside, or maybe even inside the property as opposed to in the buffer zone, they would have done that. But literally, I mean, I can point them out to you if you're walking through the site at some point. But like they're in a very strange position and don't do anything whatsoever to mitigate the light. And it also seems a strange place for. They don't fit in with the other trees, and I wouldn't have thought they would have get enough light to really grow there. That said, you know, those are great trees because I actually planted some of those to stop light coming in from my neighbor who has a basketball court that's put up there. So I just wanted to know, like, when you're walking the site and with Mr. Lipson, is it like walking inside your property, walking within the buffer zone? Do you ever involve like neighbors directly with like just finding out what their problems are with regards to light, as opposed and buffering in general, like stopping stuff getting light and parking and so on, and noise getting through, or do you just sort of, you know, it seems like you're, you know, a landscape planner, so is there any public input into any of this, or does it just sort of happen without any public input? Because I mean, honestly, I mean, one thing I heard earlier was like that people were annoyed that like cut down trees were left lying around. I actually think that's a great thing. I'd be fully in support of like not clearing up the site, because I actually think it's great that they're just left in sight and to rot. But you know, I've watched stuff rot for the last 25 years, and I've been quite happy with it. It's like animals live there. It's a great environment, and the other thing that I want to comment on, I mean, maybe this is a comment, but it is related to this, is that at the end of Evergreen, there is an area that used to be where the street continued many decades ago. And in there's a lot of stuff that grows. It's not trees, because nobody's planted any trees there, but there's a lot of like plants that grow there. And they came through the right before Labor Day and weed whacked the entire thing to the ground. The amount of birds that hang out there has gone to almost zero because they just took weed whackers and just went through it's totally devastated. And it just seems completely unnecessary that occurred. Clearly, if the trees don't present a fire hazard, I very much doubt any of this brush and so on presents a fire hazard. And you know, I think that you know, that should be. There's no way of communicating that. I mean, it just like it's happened before. The previous residents there, Sharing Plow, said that they wouldn't do that, but I just don't understand what the weed whacker issue is. I mean, I don't understand why they're just destroying all that growth, natural growth that's not like an invasive species or anything like that. So I don't know if I made comments. I don't know if it needs thrown in now, but sorry.
Steve will swear you in.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No problem.
it's okay. It's all
Do you
right.
swear to
It's
God or
me.
affirm that the testimony you just gave, any further testimony you may give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Now it's kind of.
Thank you, Mr.
I don't know that
Stewart.
there was, so I guess it wasn't any questions, it was all comment.
Well, the question was, do you meet with the neighbors, I guess was really the simple.
Oh,
Public
can
comment,
you
public
get it?
participation in the landscape, and why did you weed whack the one area?
Yeah, so I don't know if
There
there's
you
an
go.
answer for that, Mr. Moore, or not.
Well,
Well,
No, we don't really have an answer. We'll look into it.
okay, so, does Mr. Stewart need to contact you, or you contact him, or how does that work?
We're in contact with him frequently.
Okay, all right. So, all right, we'll get there.
So
We're gonna,
I'll connect.
I don't complain a lot, I mean, you know, I
No,
found the relationship very good.
but we're available
Right, sure.
for you to contact, so, so we will reconnect with you.
I have her phone number,
okay,
and she's very responsive.
all right, well, thank you very much. Mr. Moore?
Yes, my final witness is Mr. James Kyle, who is our professional planner, who will speak in support of the variances for the height and width of the solar canopies.
Okay, great, thank you. And you were sworn in, right?
I was.
I mean, yeah, you were sworn in, yeah, okay.
Just to give the board the benefit of my educational background, I have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Planning and Design from Rutgers, which I received in 1996. I've been a practicing planner for over 25 years. Our office currently represents about 22 municipal clients, much like Mr. Burgess advises you. We do the same for a number of municipalities. I have appeared before over 240 boards in the state and been qualified as an expert. I'm licensed by the state as a professional planner. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners.
I'd offer Mr. Kyle as an expert in the field of planning.
Any comments, questions of this witness's qualifications? I'd say you're halfway to getting all the cities in the state of New Jersey. You still got a few more to go.
I do.
All right, please go.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I just want to give some concise testimony because I know we want to get to public comment. There's really two bulk variances that we are here seeking this evening. The first is related to the height of the solar canopies that are proposed. 18 feet is permitted as a maximum. We are proposing 24. There's also a restriction on the width of the canopies at 40 feet, and we are proposing 45. So those are the two bulk variances. There was previously a variance identified for lighting height, but we've made all the adjustments and confirmed through Ms. Murphy's testimony that all the lighting will comply with that 15-foot maximum. So really, both of these variances can be considered under the same criteria. Now, on the positive, so we have to demonstrate both the positive and the negative. On the negative criteria, that there's no substantial detriment to the public good, which refers to adjacent properties, and that there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. So on the positive criteria, on a C2 consideration, I think there are purposes of the MLUL that are promoted here. First is purpose A, to promote the general welfare. The second is purpose N, to promote the use of renewable energy. So on the wider canopy that we are seeking, there are a couple of benefits here. First, as Mr. Marr had identified, it's a better fit within the site. So this design and locating them over these specific parking bays allows us to locate those columns within the islands where they're protected. So we're not going to have cars. I don't know if you've ever tried to park in an area where canopy columns are within parking spaces, but it creates some challenges. It also creates some safety concerns. So this arrangement and making the canopies wider fits better within the existing site constraints. This also allows, as Mr. Moore had said, for us to give full coverage to both of those sides of the parking bay. So those cars that are underneath that canopy, which is 5 feet wider, are shaded. It also provides some benefit in that we're shading more of the asphalt paving that is underneath that. So we, typically in the hot summer, you get this heat island effect where the asphalt heats up during the day and then releases that heat at night. The more of that asphalt that we can shade, the less we'll have that effect. So there's a benefit there. It also allows us to have less linear length of the canopies. So if we were to make them 40 feet and compliant, these would be longer than they are today. So we can actually reduce the linear extent of these by increasing the width by that minimal 5 feet. The other benefit here of the increased width, as Mr. Moore had hinted to, so the reason that we're putting the EV charging stations underneath the canopies is the manufacturers actually recommend that you charge in shade. So there's a manufacturer benefit by having those EV stations. So we've talked about, the possibility of, could we put it on other bays? Is there another way that we could do this? But there's actually a benefit in that we can put those EV charging stations underneath those canopies, and that wider width accommodates that. Now, on the height of the canopy, as Mr. Moore had said, this is really driven by the need to have the ability to fully circulate emergency vehicles, so particularly a fire truck. That 13'6" clearance on the low side is what's dictated by the size or height of the fire apparatus. The 24 feet is just a natural function of the 7-degree tilt that we have. So it's really the need to have that increased clearance at the drive aisle that's driving the increased height that we have of 24 feet on the high side of that canopy. It also allows for access for maintenance vehicles. So obviously in the wintertime, we need to get in, plow those spaces, push snow around. So we want to make sure that none of those vehicles are going to strike the lower edge of the canopy, which is, again, driving the need for that increased height of 13'6". When we look at, so I do think there are positive benefits to the increased width as well as the increased height. On the negative criteria, when we first look at the potential impact to surrounding properties, the panels are located well interior to the site. So we have this 125-foot buffer that rings both the southern and western side. We have those homes along Kent Place Boulevard to the south. We have homes along Passaic Avenue to the west. Those panels are located hundreds of feet interior to the site and well away from those homes. So we don't have canopies that are right at the perimeter of those parking spaces. So they're, again, well interior to the site. We're also proposing, as we've talked about, Mr. Cortese said, significant supplemental buffering that's going to increase the quality of that 125-foot buffer. So you saw from the photos that he presented in the exhibit, like many mature forests, the understory kind of gets shaded out, pushed away as we've removed dead trees and then adding native species that are appropriate to the understory. That's going to increase that buffering that we have, again, at eye level, as Mr. Cortese had said. And as he also indicated, we've pushed some of that buffering out to the perimeter or property line, kind of, you know, providing a better alternative there because it's going to cut off and you know, more from what the person at the property line is viewing. The panels that are located to the south in the exhibit, I just want to put this back up real quick. So as is demonstrated on A22, so particularly to the panels from the homes that are to the south along Kent Place Boulevard, you can see that we have a pretty substantial grade change. So those panels, even though the height is a little higher, and that high side is actually farther away than the low side, those are well below or kind of at ground level with the homes that we have to the south. So in terms of any potential impact from that increased height, it's rather far away from the homes to the south, and it's on the downhill side. So that edge of the canopy at 24 feet is not going to stick up significantly where it would be, you know, visible prominently from the homes that we have to the south, which is an important consideration. So given all this, the supplemental buffering, the topographic changes that we have, I don't think that the variances that we're requesting here related to the panels will have a substantial impact to adjacent properties. And our hope, again, is that the supplemental buffering that we're proposing is going to go further to address any of that concern. Now, as far as the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance, I did review the 2000 master plan, the 06 re-exam, and then in 2016, the master plan revision that was written by Topology. There isn't really any mention in any of those documents about the basis for these restrictions. So then we have to go to kind of the general purpose of the ordinance, which largely mirrors the purposes of the municipal land use law. So when you look at those purposes and really the fact that we're promoting some of the purposes of the municipal land use law, and I think particularly given the fact that we don't feel with the supplemental buffering and the topography that we're going to have any substantial impact on surrounding properties, I think the intent of those standards is largely met and will not be substantially impacted in any negative way. So I know that's probably oversimplified given all we've heard tonight, but that's all I had in the way of direct, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Good, well, thank you. Board members, questions of the witness? Anyone? No. Members of the public, questions of this witness? And of course, our professionals as well, questions of this witness. Joe?
No question. I thought it was an excellent presentation. The only thing I'd like to bring to the board's attention, and I'll turn to Steve, but I think it was Judge Harris who first talked about the C2 variance in the context of, is this a better zoning alternative? And when you think about all the things that were just mentioned in terms of, you know, circulation for fire trucks and the supplemental plantings and whatnot, I think it's safe to conclude that this is a better zoning alternative. And I would just leave you with that.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Raffay, any questions? Ms. Witness? All right. Mr. Moore?
Thank you.
Yes, I believe, with one exception, which I will get to, that we have, at this point through our testimony, responded to all of the comments in both Mr. Burgess's and Crippe's memos, and also the Environmental Commission, which had the same concerns which Mr. Bell expressed about the location of the trees. But there was one comment from the construction official, and he said that it should be ADA compliant, and we're talking about light fixtures, trees, and solar panels. So I think that that's not an applicable condition. But other than that, I think we've met all the conditions in our testimony.
Does that seem consistent, Ms. Raffay and Joe? Yeah, okay. All right. And Steve, you've got note of all those, obviously, in the reports from the various staff members.
I got the applicant stipulated to all the conditions set forth in all the reports. I have the additional ones as well, but I'll save them for the appropriate time to go through the motion of the
Okay.
board.
All right.
Well, there were a couple where we didn't actually stipulate, we just addressed and explained.
Right, yeah, but right. There was nothing that you disagreed with in the reports. It's either been satisfied or you stipulated to them as conditions of approval, and then there were a few others. I'll add them
Okay.
when we get to the motion.
Great, okay, great, thanks. So now we get to the point of the public statements or comments. Anyone from the members of the public would like to come forward? Mr. Smith?
Hi, my name is Tim Smith, SMITH, address 247A Kent Place Boulevard here in Summit.
And thank you. You know where we're going.
Right.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
I just wanted to comment to BMS that I think that what they're doing is great in terms of the solar electricity and providing for EVs. That seems like a really good use of your resources and enabling a greener campus, which is great. I'm also very excited about some of the landscaping plans, which would go a long way to mitigating some of the light that comes through that buffer areas. I think a couple of things to consider during the landscape process is actually the view from the homes. So there is a desire for privacy from where I live. I know that people don't want to see me in my kitchen or in the morning, or my daughters getting ready for school on the second floor of my house. So it would be good if the landscaping took into account actually the view from people's houses. Some are on the second story, some are at the first story, and some are at the ground level. So it's important that, as discussed in the landscaping plan, that there is a canopy approach where it's high, medium, and low, covering the plantings. And the arborvitae around the border have done a tremendous job, and so I'm very thankful to BMS for doing that part. The second thing I wanted to comment on is the noise that's coming from the campus. The HVAC noise has already been well established throughout the community as being something that's a loud drone, and sometimes louder than...
Sorry, could you slow down?
Oh, sorry.
A little bit?
Yeah. The drone itself can be a little loud. That's been documented already. One other aspect that I wanted to comment on, and thankfully we did not have any snow this year that really accumulated, but in years past there is reverse alarms coming from the campus starting at midnight or 2 in the morning and going all the way through 4 or 5 in the morning. And I am sensitive to noise, but the reverse alarms make it impossible to sleep because it sounds like your alarm on your alarm clock. And with the increase of these canopies, there is going to be more turns that are going to need to be made by those plows as they're plowing back. So I know that we've offered this before. There are other options available with reverse alarms for the snow removal. They're called white noise reverse alarms, and I've offered to look into these myself or even buy them. They're about $100 to $200, and it's a white noise that's directed just in the direction of the people who may be in danger of being run over by the reversing vehicle. So it's something that I would encourage the board to look into, to take into account the additional obstacles of the snow removal and the reverse alarms that are coming from the campus as a result of snow removal. Thank you.
Thanks, that's an interesting point.
We could just comment on one comment there, and Mr. Maher, I guess there won't be more motions or backing up. It'll be about the same.
It's not going to have any impact on the parking lot area. It actually might make less snow because the solar canopies will take that, so there might be less plowing in that area.
All right, interesting. Okay. Any other members of the public who would like to come forward and speak at this time? Please, come on. State your name and address, please.
Abe Casbo, 253 Kent Place Boulevard.
Could you spell your last name?
Sure. Kasbo. Mr. Moore, thank you.
Sir, if you can raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to God or affirm testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, thank you for offering to do the sound study. Can we put a time frame on that? Can we say, you know, somewhere between 30 to 90 days after construction that study can be done?
90 days.
90 days.
Absolutely. After the solar canopies are installed.
After the solar canopies are installed,
Phase 1.
phase 1, 90 days, there will be a sound study.
Then we can commit to after phase 2 and after phase 3. We'll go so far as to say that. If we do it all at one shot, we'll just do one at night, one during the day, and we will commit to doing them before and after each phase. If we do all 3 phases at the same time, if it works out that way, then we'll just do the 2, or we could do 6 based on, you get what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
So BMS is committed to, after we do each phase, to do a sound study day and night.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Caspo. Any other members of the public who'd like to come forward? Okay, seeing none at this point, I guess we will close the public hearing. It's a time at which the board can deliberate. Oftentimes at this point, I ask the board professionals if they have any comments at all, anything that you'd like to say with regard to what we've heard tonight.
I do not.
No, I don't know.
Okay. So among the board members, board deliberations, we've closed the public hearing. Any thoughts, ideas from the board?
I
Oh,
do.
hi, Andy, yeah.
Hi, thank you. So I really do love this project, the addition of the solar panels and the expansion of the EV charging. It's fantastic. I do still have some concerns about those 46 trees, the removal of them. And it may be because I didn't get or I think I didn't understand that this was not a viable alternative to place those panels in an alternate row. To me, it sounds like a viable alternative because it would basically require the construction of new construction of new islands and the loss of a minimal number of spots. Unless I'm misunderstanding that, that sounds pretty reasonable to me. Is that the case?
Well, Chris, can you address this? The total parking lot area.
You have to go to the mic, because other people can't
This
hear.
is a civil engineer. I can try.
Let me go back to the exhibit.
This is A2.
Correct.
You remain under oath.
Thank you. So I think what you're referring to is the fact that, and I'm pointing to the most northerly set of canopies, which are on an island. There's an island there. It's 9 feet wide. The next row to the south of that, there's an island that's 9 feet wide, similarly with all the others, except this one, which is on a peninsula, if you will, a larger area, curved area. If we were to put solar canopies on the aisles immediately to the south, shift these over, we create a number of challenges. The canopies would need to be narrowed because you'd only be working with the depth of the two stalls back to back. So you're going to go down to probably 36 feet, whereas here we're able to do 45. Those, as Mr. Maurer indicated, those columns are not going to line up with the stalls. So we're gonna lose 2 stalls every time we sink a column in there and lose those parking spaces. And so, and then the last thing is that as this southerly aisle would shift closer to the trees, you have the complication of the shadow of the trees coming into play. You're gonna lose effectiveness of the canopy. So for that reason, we've pushed them on to what we think is, the best solution, which is to utilize the existing island. We also, we also have the EV chargers, as was identified. The EV chargers have a home in that island. They wouldn't in these islands. They would be unprotected, and they would be along, those back-to-back spaces. Because so that's sort of the practical problems. I think that was all mentioned. If you try to even put those columns in and align and stagger the spaces, again, it's a 3-foot diameter footing. It's more than just sort of a light pole. When you see light poles in a parking field, it's a little bit bigger than that. So we feel this is a better design for all of those reasons, and that's why we've utilized the islands. If we were kind of doing this from scratch, that's the way you would want to do it, and have a separating island continuous with the columns in it. So it's quite preferable to really do it this way.
Yes.
In addition to that, the lighting right now, the poles are located where the solar canopies are. So you're eliminating the poles and putting the pendant fixture. If you move the solar canopy down here, you would be adding more fixtures because the poles would have to remain here. I couldn't light all the way out to the edge. So you would be actually adding more light and increasing the light levels of the space if you changed it.
And then one more thing, I think you testified to, you can't shade the solar panels with trees directly. So that, if there are trees there that are tall enough in that area that would then shade the solar canopies, it's kind of self-defeating, to be candid.
Thank you. So hearing that right there was important. I did not get that point before.
Okay.
Those trees that are existing are tall enough that they would block the light from.
Not really, because they're pretty lighted.
Mike,
I'm sorry, everybody's got to get to a mic, and everybody remains under oath. And we've reopened the hearing, so we'll address that issue
They're roughly
when
six.
everybody's done. Thank you.
They're roughly 60 to 80 feet tall, so they're quite tall in order to cast shade, depending on the sun angle.
the ones in the parking lot aren't. The ones in the parking lot, I think, also.
Right, not the southernmost ones, but the ones that are in the middle. I understand the issue with the ones in the south, but the ones in the middle are not quite tall enough to block. Okay.
Great.
To use your example, they're gonna grow, and then they'll walk.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, it might be more appropriate to have each witness testify in front of the mic, identify who they are.
Well, we asked the question from the board.
Right. Sort of kind of going around
Yeah,
the audience.
yeah, okay.
If it helps, I did get my answers. I think it's fine.
All right, okay, great. So we
Yeah,
have the answers. that we-
Could I ask a question?
Okay, the public hearing is closed. We're discussing.
Oh, it's not a question.
We're having
Okay,
a
I'd
discussion
like
among the
to.
board members is
Correct.
what the
Okay,
process
I would like
is,
to
just be sure.
follow up on
Yeah.
Andy's point.
Yeah,
I would agree that there's a lot to commend in this project, just about everything. That there are solar panels at all. That is a cost that BMS is undertaking, and
and you might want to speak up a little bit.
yeah,
Rick, so
and,
that
and,
Richard
and,
can
and
hear
it's a very good thing to see this happening. It's the wave of the future. It's not required. It's very commendable. That the lighting is more efficient and more pleasing in different ways and safer is absolutely commendable, positive. I have a scorecard here. That the size of the panels, as was explained, may even be better, in terms of safety for emergency vehicles and snow removal. I have no problem with that. The responsiveness to neighbors' concerns about acoustics and glare, a lot of promises were made, and that's commendable. Let's assume they'll be kept. The location of the panels is still troubling to me, and I heard loud and clear what Mr. Cortese was saying about the height of the trees. But as an architect and as someone teaching in engineering school on all this stuff, I don't see the drawings. I see from 50 feet away, an aerial photo, and you're worried that the trees are 60 feet tall. The question that I had asked, and I'm not asking it again, I'm just making a statement, you need a solar shading diagram to be convinced that there's significant amount of shading, particularly at noon. Particularly at noon. You know, we're not talking about south light, you know, at dusk or at dawn. We're talking about at noon. I'm not suggesting that the statement is incorrect, that the trees are 60 feet or maybe even 80 feet tall, or that they will get taller. But I would maintain that it doesn't make much of a difference, absent an exhibit that shows a shading diagram, whether the panels are put where the existing island is or where, and here's where the point was missed completely, because I was unclear, apologies. I'm not saying put it posts in where the cars are butting face to face. I'm suggesting that you put in a new island, duplicating the island that's there. That doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because you have a row of spaces, 54 in numbers, on the extreme south side of the lot that aren't needed. Why aren't they needed? Because of COVID, because people are working at home. And I would maintain that the amount of parking spaces is excessive for anything that will ever be needed there again. So if 54 spaces were just erased and maybe more of a buffer area were added to the south, an island could be inserted. It's not starting from scratch. It's moving one row of 46 spaces in phase one slightly to the south, adding a new island so that everything advantageous about putting the posts and the canopies above them where the island is now would be duplicated, and there would be an additional island. Right now, the geometry doesn't allow for that additional island without sacrificing some spaces. I understand that there are procedural, legal, and jurisdictional reasons why you can't just arbitrarily eliminate spaces that are required. I would say that that's probably an easy variance to attain, and probably one that's worth doing. So that's, you know, my only argument with the point that was made by Christopher Cerati, is that I'm not suggesting putting posts where the cars are butting face to face. I'm suggesting putting in a new island.
Thanks, Rick, I appreciate that, very helpful. Any other members of the boards have some thoughts or comments on this application? Jay?
Well, I've heard from fellow members how much they like the plan, heard from the residents how much they seem to like the plan. I like the plan. I understand the concerns that have been raised. It sounds like Mr. Moore is about to address that. He stood up, I assume, to address the comments that Mr. Bell just made. So maybe I'll stop at that point.
Well, I don't want
What
to
say about that.
further destroy good order, but Mr. Cerati did whisper in my ear that we would also, if we had done what Mr. Bell is suggesting, we'd also have to redo all the drainage in the parking lot as well. And you all like the plan, and sort of, we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Okay, thank you.
I
All right.
agree with that.
Okay, all right, other members of the board, comments, thoughts, ideas? And before we move
I have
to.
one idea.
Yep,
We
yep.
have a few conditions of approval. I think the lighting plan is obviously a great upgrade. But sometimes you just don't know exactly how lighting's gonna pan out. And typically, I think on other resolutions, there's a condition where the city can inspect it when it's done, just to confirm that it is what we thought it would look like. And I don't anticipate, honestly, there'll be any issues whatsoever, but it's been a common condition of approval on other resolutions.
May I comment on that? Listening to Mrs. Murphy, I bet she knows exactly how the lighting's gonna turn out. She knows exactly how to. I'm willing to
I'm very
accept her
impressed with the lighting,
testimony.
Jay. I'm very
I don't
impressed.
think it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Moore, I think you were going to address that question.
We would agree to such a test or inspection.
Okay, all right. Well, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. I think, Jay, you're right. I'm pretty confident, Mrs. Murphy, that she would, I'd bet $100 that she's got it right, but.
Anyone want to take the other side of that?
Yeah, no. All right, so if you'll agree to that, that's terrific. Thank you. Mr. Warner, I guess you got that?
I got it.
Great, terrific. All right, any other members of the board? Would someone like to make a motion to approve, subject to Mr. Warner's discussion of all of the conditions.
If you want, Mr. Chairman, I could quickly
Yeah.
tee it up.
Please do, yes, thank you.
I'm assuming, if I hear as such, that there's a motion to grant, it'd be a motion to grant preliminary and final major site plan approval along with the 2 bulk variances, the solar canopies, 45 feet in width as opposed to 40-foot width maximum pursuant to the ordinance, as well as 24 feet in height versus 18-foot in height maximum permitted by the ordinance, with all the conditions stipulated to by the applicant, specifically those set forth in the various reports of the board professionals and staff members, as well as the additional conditions stipulated to this evening, which include all solar panel drains having the downspout cleanouts? Or-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's in the engineers. I would like to, there was one set of comments in.
No ADA.
No ADA, and
for
the other thing
The
is-
trees and the lighting
The-
are ADA compliant.
Right.
Already.
We're not doing any heavy construction, so we won't have any soil or have to do that kind of the conditions that were mentioned in the engineer's memo, so
Right.
that wouldn't be necessary.
Only those which were stipulated to or applicable. In addition to the additional ones, we have the one-time pre and post was offered installation of the canopy, installation noise audit, both nighttime and daytime. What's that?
It was just post.
Well, then it changed. So, but all right, just post, okay.
No, it was,
Per phase. He said if they
Yeah, I
do
heard the
per
phase,
phase.
but
it
then he
was
said as many
one
as
during the
6.
day and one during at night.
He was,
Yeah,
okay,
Day
so
and
but,
night.
pre and post, you meant
Day and-
daytime and nighttime.
Yeah.
I got it.
yeah. After the
For each of the
construction.
phases, should there be 3 phases? And also, we had the condition of approval for, as long as on site. Oh, the ongoing replacement of any trees that are diseased or died during the occupancy of the site by this applicant. And we have a post-installation light inspection for compliance purposes as well. Those are the additional conditions of approval. So if that's an accurate depiction of the relief that's being sought and what the board is granting, that would be, as I would understand, a motion to approve.
Okay, thanks, Steve. There's a lot of stuff to keep track of, thank you. So, someone would like to make a motion to approve, followed by a second?
So moved.
So moved, and a second, and a second, Jay. I guess to go to a vote, please.
Mr. Brinkerhoff?
Yes.
Ms. Balson Alvarez?
Yes.
Ms. McNeil?
Yes.
Mr. Delory,
Yes.
Councilmember Miniger?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Zucker?
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Chairman Anderson?
Yes,
The motion carries.
great, thank you all very much, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Mr. Linson, thank you for being here, we appreciate it, I know you had a lot to say tonight, so we appreciate you.
If you did say anything, you were sworn in.
You were mentioned more than any single person, just to let you know. I kept track of that.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, good, we are too.
We have our.
All right. We've got a little bit more business to do.
No, we have to approve the minutes.
Yeah, we got a little bit of more business to do as a board, so let's just. They're just here today, yeah. That's what happens on the 23rd of October. All right, so we got a couple more resolutions to deal with here. We have a resolution.
Oh, you can take it? Sure. I'll take it.
Yeah, okay, yep. Are you all leaving those exhibits, Ms. Murphy? Oops. Yep,
Everyone, please leave exhibits for Stephanie. We need to maintain those for the resolution and compliance.
Are the rolls, do they have the numbers on them?
Yeah, no, we need we need the ones with the labels.
Yeah, tell them to get all the exhibits back.
There you go outside, so I'm not disturbing you, but I'll bring you back.
Okay, we have two resolutions from our presentation last week on the Lawton C. Johnson Middle School and Summit High School, and Jay had picked up a couple of comments there with regard to city versus municipal township, I meant to say.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Jay. And I guess that happened in one of these in two different locations, but I think you've gotten all those, Stephanie's taking care of those. So let's start with the Lawton C. Johnson Middle School, resolution. Any other comments with regard to this resolution? Do we need a voice vote on this?
A roll call, if you don't mind.
Yeah, do we need
A
motion to
second,
approve,
roll.
a motion to approve, may I have a motion to approve the Lawton C. Johnson Middle School resolution? So somewhere, thank you, Paul. And a second?
Second.
Second, Paul and Paul, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm just gonna say who the eligible voting members are. It's Chairman Anderson, Ms. McNeil, Councilmember Miniger, Mr. Formicelli, Mr. Stern, and Mr. Bell. So now I'll do the vote. Chairman Anderson?
Yes,
Ms. McNeil?
Yes.
Councilmember Miniger?
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
The motion carries.
thank you. All right, moving to the next one, Summit Board of Education for Summit High School. Resolution, again, for an expansion of the school for the STREAM program. Similar kind of thing with the township versus cities in a couple of locations, which we've already cleared up. Any other comments or questions with regard to this resolution? Hearing none.
One quick question. In the minutes, I don't see anything about the discussion about adding solar panels to the roof of the high school.
Oh, is that right? In the meeting,
In the meeting,
in the resolutions?
right, well, I'm not sure what I'm reading. But,
Is that something we had requested that they do, and they agreed to do?
well, it was raised, and
Yeah.
it was a suggestion. I don't know if it was part of the resolution. I guess it wasn't.
I don't know, did we stipulate that, Chris? I don't know, I don't recall.
Concept, just to
Yeah.
ask them to think about it, but not to necessarily do it.
I remember having the discussion, but I don't remember making it a stipulation.
I never understood that to be a formal recommendation, but I'm sure.
Anyone else recollection with regard to that? Adding solar
Just-
collectors? Nope, yes?
No, not that it was a stipulation.
It was an idle suggestion,
A
and they are
suggestion,
entertaining it
right.
evidently, so maybe it's not needed here.
Okay. Steve, does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that's fine. All you could do is make a recommendation anyway, because
Right.
it's a school board capital project, but if it was made as a recommendation, it could be modified and included in the resolutions. If it wasn't, but it was just discussed, then it's accurately drafted.
Yeah, that's a question. My memory's failing me at this point in terms of what, I don't recall we made any requirements or
Stipulation,
stipulations
no.
in either. I think it was.
I don't think we could, right?
Right.
I mean, it was all just kind of our
You could make a
thoughts, and they can take it or
recommendation.
not take it.
Right.
You could make a
Or leave it.
recommendation, but
Right.
you could not require it as a condition.
Would there be a procedural difficulty in making it as a recommendation after the fact
We
today?
could put it in this resolution and.
I think we should strive for solar panels on every public building, every building that benefits from public funding.
If that's.
This
what
is one of them.
A majority of the board recalls that as being an accurate memorialization, you can go back and re-vote on the first one and put them in both.
Yeah, I guess that's the question.
It was absolutely discussed.
Hmm?
It was absolutely discussed.
It was
Yeah, it was
discussed,
discussed.
yeah, but
It's
not,
good practice to do some due diligence and see if it's worth doing, right? And if it's not practical, then maybe
So
don't
the
do it.
suggestion among here would be that you would send both of these resolutions back with, good night, Bridget.
Thank
With with a suggestion that the board wishes the Summit School Board of Education to consider solar collectors at these two locations.
It's really just the high school.
Just the high
The
school.
Okay.
middle school
Then you don't have
doesn't
to do the
afford
other.
the opportunity.
All right, so we're working, we approved the middle school, we're gonna modify the high school one to include, is this good with the board members that were there? Why don't you list the numbers of board members that could vote on this? It was the same as we
Sure,
had before.
it's the
yeah.
same ones as before, but I could just say them again.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Chairman Anderson, Ms. McNeil, Councilmember Miniger, Mr. Formicelli, Mr. Stern, and Mr. Bell.
All of those in favor of going back with a comment, suggestion, recommendation to the board that they consider solar collectors for the high school? Everybody good with that?
Agreed.
Okay. all right,
Yeah,
well,
We'll,
thank you.
we'll just take out where it says without recommendation at the end and say with the recommendation that there be good consideration given to solar rooftop or canopies?
No canopies, no solar panels. On the new roof.
Rooftop solar.
Rooftop,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, very good. Thanks, Rick, for bringing that up.
Sure.
Okay, so we need to do a vote on that. I need a motion to approve, subject to the change. And a
Also
second.
move.
Rick, okay, and a second, Andy. All right, and a vote on that.
Okay. Chairman Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. McNeil,
Yes.
Councilmember Miniger,
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli,
Yes.
Mr. Stern,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Great, thank you. All right, we've got one more. I guess this is an amendment to the service agreement for the firm, I guess, is Savile Shaw, Corsini, Warner, Gillespie, Ogrodnik, Fisher, PA. We were insufficient budget, and we need to increase that budget given the cases that we've had before the board, the applications we've had before the board, and need to increase the amount available for that firm to draw on by $10,000 from $35,000 to $45,000. And that's the resolution I think everybody got in their packet, right? And,
And Mr. Chairman, that is budgeted for, but the contract amount not to exceed is just being increased by 10, not that it would, but it's giving itself room. But there is room in there is money in the budget.
okay, very good. Okay, so this, for everybody's education here, it's been run through the city staff, and Matthew and others have reviewed it and approved it. So it's really just for the board to essentially vote on at this point. So I guess we'll ask for a motion to approve. If anyone willing to step up and give me a motion to approve.
So moved.
Andy, and a second?
Second.
Paul, okay, or Ellen, maybe get Ellen second. Andy. Okay, so here we are, right at the,
Wait, I just have to call the.
oh yeah, we gotta do that, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Chairman Anderson?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mr. Brinkerhoff?
Yes.
Ms. Balson Alvarez?
Yes.
Ms. McNeil?
Yes.
Mr. Delory,
Yes.
Councilmember Miniger?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Zucker?
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, great, there we go. All right, so then the last thing is our meeting minutes from our previous meeting, September 26th. I went through them, I didn't have any comments, corrections, additions, deletions. Anyone else have any comments regard to the minutes?
For consistency, just the solar comment about the high school.
Putting that in the minutes? So let's see, Summer High School, yeah, I guess, why don't you, that's a good idea. Why don't we add that to this paragraph here? And we'll revise the meeting minutes accordingly. And so we can approve the meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve subject to the change of adding solar collectors.
So moved.
Rick, okay. And a second. Jay, look at Jay.
No, I was not here for
Oh,
part.
no, that's right, yeah. Has to be someone else who's here. Paul up and Paul seconding it. Okay, very good. All right, so we got, thanks, Rick. Keeping track of
Well,
that.
we didn't do the voice vote.
Yep, but we need to do a voice vote on the approval of the minutes, subject to the change that we just discussed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Great, thanks. All right, so our next meeting is November 27th, after Thanksgiving. Thank you all for hanging in there to 10:30 at night, which I thought this would be a little bit shorter meeting, but It's, the Bristol Myers Squibb campus is gonna be a showplace for the township. So, thanks, everyone. Joe, thank you, and Marie, nice to meet you, and look forward to working with you. All right. So I gotta close the meeting here at 10:25.